Hey, good evening. I have 7:30, and I believe I saw 6 members, including myself. So we will call the meeting to the June 16th meeting to order at 7:30. Amy, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Fuller.
Here.
Mr. DeLomo. Mr. Manel. Mr. Van Wagner. Mr. Ashkenazi.
Here.
Mr. Mamie. Mrs. Tallarico.
Here.
Mr. DeGennaro.
Here.
Mr. Puglielli.
Here.
Madam Chair.
Here. Thank you. And if we can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic,
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the notice requirements of the open public meeting law for this meeting have been satisfied. A copy of the notice having been sent to the Asbury Park Press and the Coaster and filed in the office of the Township on July 16th, 2021. No new cases will be started after 10 o'clock p.m. and no new testimony taken after 10:30 p.m. In addition, the applicant will be limited to 45 minutes of testimony. All meetings will be video and audio shown on the Township of Ocean Community Cable Channel, Channel 22 on Verizon Fios, and Channel 77 on Cablevision. And the minutes that we have for approval are from March 17th, 2022. I will offer, is there a second? From anyone?
I'll second.
Okay, Amy, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Fuller.
Yes.
Let's see, Mrs. Tallarico.
Yes.
And Madam Chair.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. The following resolution memorializations: Wahid Iraqi, Block 35.04, Lot 1, 15 Nottingham Road, Ocean, bulk variance approval. And Cozy Kingdom LLC, Block 25.1, Lot 9, 218 and 218 and a half, Chatham, Oakhurst, bulk variance approval, certification of non-conforming use approval. Devon Dam, Block 97, Lot 5, 1401 Chestnut Avenue, Wanamassa, bulk variance approval. 436 Brookside Avenue, FTH 10, Block 25, Lot 141, 436 Brookside Avenue in Oakhurst. Charles Plou, Block 113, Lot 37, 51 Wanamassa Point Road, Ocean, bulk variance approval. And that's it. So I will offer, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller.
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi.
Yes.
Mrs. Tallarico.
Yes.
Mr. DeGennaro.
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli.
yes,
And Madam Chair.
Yes. The following cases will be carried to July 21st, 2022 on Zoom. Meeting ID and passcode information listed below. Ashkenazi, Block 11.01, Lot 3, 1036 Norwood Avenue, Ocean. Seaview Corporate Park, LTD, Block 149.01, Lot 1.01, 2603 Route 66 in Ocean. 199 Highwood Road, LLC, Block 25.16, Lot 2, 199 Highwood Road, Oakhurst. Cordoba Ocean, LLC, Block 205, Lots 2 and 3, 1309 Herbert Avenue, 1312 Allenhurst Avenue, Ocean. Sean Realty, LLC, Block 141, Lot 3, NJSH Route 66, Asbury Avenue, Ocean. Stephen Shamey, Block 69, Lot 13, 606 Corley's Avenue in Ocean. Sorora Land Development, Block 22, Lots 85 and 85.01, 280 Norwood Avenue, Ocean. Joseph Shira, LLC, Block 25, Lot 141, 436 Brookside Avenue in Oakhurst. And our first case for this evening is Daniel Srouer, Block 46, Lot 10, 107 Parker Avenue, Ocean, Zone R2. This is an application to construct an 800 square foot cabana within the required rear yard setback and will exceed the maximum permitted building coverage. The attorney for the applicant is Mr. Robert D. Farber.
And
Miss
Madam, and
One second before this goes on, I'd
That's
like
correct.
everyone, the board members on the record, prior to us getting into the evening's meeting, I wanted everyone to know that members of the board, the chair, it's entirely inappropriate, and I believe, Mark, you may say illegal, for any applicant or their attorney to contact you, send you emails in any fashion at all when they have a pending application on. So if that happens to anyone on the board, at all, please contact myself immediately or Amy and do not interact. If they do send something to you, please disregard it. And Mark Steinberg and I will attend to it accordingly. You're muting, but Mark, you're muted.
Can happen sometimes. You get on a chain. But if you see anything coming from somebody that's not me or Amy or Ron on a current case, the easiest thing to do is delete it and tell us who it came from, and we'll handle it from there.
Thank you all.
Now, Madam Chairman, before we start number one, Mr. Soroyer, I believe that I represented him when he purchased land in Ocean Township, and he was a very good client, but that makes me ineligible to be the board's attorney because there could be a conflict of interest. Now, I've discussed this with Ron, and I discussed it with Mr. Farber, and I discussed this with Jim Higgins. And basically, Jim feels that he can present the issues to the board as the planner. And if there are any legal issues that come up, I can't assist the board in resolving them, and the matter would have to be continued to another meeting where we'll have alternate counsel. We try to do that for tonight, but the planning board attorney, Mr. Lexington, was not available at the last minute. And we've been carrying this for a while, and we would like to get it off our books. So if the board can handle it with Mr. Higgins and with the applicant's attorney, I will take notes and give them to Mr. Lexington so we can prepare a resolution if the board decides to act tonight. But I can't be your attorney on this one. Thank you.
thank you,
Mr. Farber, with all that said, go ahead.
Thank you. So, Mr. Steinberg, thank you. And Madam Chairman and members of the board, public, good evening. I am representing Mr. Daniel Srouer. He is the fee simple owner of 107 Parker Avenue, also known as Block 46, Lot 10. It's in an R2 zone. We had begun this application back during the November 18, 2021 meeting. After that time, some reports weren't disseminated. The application has been changed somewhat, and it has evolved over the several months that I now come back with you with my client and some experts. It's our intention to discuss the matter and present evidence. I want to add that I will be presenting 3 witnesses. Mr. Daniel Srouer will be the first one. He is the owner. The second will be David Feldman, the architect. And the third and final will be Walter Hopkin, who is the civil engineer. Madam Chairman, subject to your approval, I'm going to leave the witnesses quite a bit because I think I can get through this in one hearing. And I would like to try and do that. And I think you would all like me to try and do that. If at any time anyone has any questions, interrupt me, please, and go ahead. I know Mr. Higgins is extremely familiar with this matter from his reports, as is Mr. Matlock. And I know they're going to give their spiels in a moment. But as indicated, this is a lot where we seek to add an 800 square foot pool house in the back with bulk issues. It is a permitted use in a permitted zone. It is a C2 type of variance, not a C1. I know Mr. Higgins is going to explain that. I've sat here and listened to him explain it probably better than anyone else. So I have no reason to doubt him tonight. And with nothing further to say at this time, pending my calling the first witness, Ms. Chairman, I suspect you want Mr. Matlock and then Mr. Higgins to give their pieces. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Higgins, if you can.
What I will do is I will summarize my report because there are some issues I raise in there, and I think those issues will be addressed by the applicant's experts and the applicant himself. And I don't want to try and cloud the application by saying things that might get the board apprehensive about the application. So I think what I will do is summarize very quickly and then allow Ben to give his report, and then we can let the applicant make their presentation. Basically what this is, it's an application to construct a pool house and make some other site modifications. The applicant had received approval back in 2019, I think it is. And some of the issues in that approval are whether it's questionable whether or not the applicant has complied with them. One is the location of the air conditioner condenser. I think that has to be clarified. The second is the applicant agreed, and it was a condition of approval, that the driveway be a full 20-foot wide driveway to provide for maximum off-street parking. The driveway as it is now is 12 feet wide. It only provides for 2 spaces as opposed to 4, which would have been provided with a 20-foot wide driveway. That has to be addressed by the applicant. And I think the number of bedrooms is very important in the house because the number of spaces required on the site is dependent upon the number of bedrooms in the house. There are variances that are necessary. And as Mr. Farber said, this is really a application that falls under the C2 criteria. And for those newer board members who may not be intimately familiar with the different criteria, there are 2 criteria for both variances. One is called the C1 criteria, which means there has to be a hardship that's associated in some way with the shape, the topography, the size, or some physical aspect of the site itself that creates a hardship that dictates the need for a variance. In this case, I don't see any hardships, but the C2 is a variance where the benefits, the planning benefits for granting the application, and those planning benefits need to be tied into one of the 15 purposes of the municipal land use law, where those benefits substantially outweigh any detriments. And that's where I think the applicant might have something to hang his hat on in terms of the variances that are being requested. And the variances that are requested are the maximum building coverage, which exceeds the ordinance, as permits 22% of the buildable lot area. They're proposing 27.1% of the buildable lot area. Accessory building setback, the setback that's required for a building of this size. And I think Mr. Farber said it was 800 square feet, but the building is actually, in terms of the size of the building itself, is about 700 square feet, and that includes the 2-foot overhang surrounding it. The walls of the building are just under 500 square feet in area. Then there's the accessory structure setback, which deals with the window wells and the AC unit. And those are not buildings, but they're structures. So there are variances necessary for them also. I think that the applicant needs to find those variances that are necessary and provide the planning justifications for those variances.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Matlack.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so there were a few iterations with this plan. I had provided a few comments in prior review letters with regards to stormwater. The applicant did address those comments. They are providing a stormwater infiltration system to offset the increase in impervious coverage from the pool house. So I don't have any other substantial engineering concerns, and I think that they've addressed stormwater to my satisfaction.
Thank you. Mr. Farber.
Thank you. And everybody, let me just give a very, very quick overview. This is, I sit corrected, Mr. Higgins, I guess a 700 square foot cabana, pool house setup. Through its various itinerations, it has shrunk a bit, and I apologize, my notes are incorrect. The fulcrum of this application is, and Mr. Soar is going to go into this, and this is quite an interesting issue. His wife has certain disabilities. The pool house is rather critical so that she can participate in the pool. Part of the application is putting a ramp from the back so she will have pool house access. If anybody were to drive by the property, they would note that there are constructed ramps around the house into the house for that reason. And I think in terms of the American with Disability Act, Mr. Hopkins is going to have something to say regarding the C2 variance issues. But aside from that, the window wells, there will be testimony by Mr. Hopkins. He's the last to go. There's a safety issue, and they are below ground level, so they're not really visible. The HVAC unit will be discussed as well. There was a concern that the property was being used by a camp or something, which I understand an objector may have been concerned about. Fascinatingly, I spoke to my client who's going to testify shortly that, God bless him, he has over 30 grandkids. 6 of whom live with him, approximately 5 of whom are catty-cornered across the street. So there are very often a lot of children in the pool area, particularly in the summer months. In addition, the neighbor directly across the street apparently has a business called Steg and Surf. I'm showing this up on my iPhone because I don't know how to screen share. This is a trailer that is parked across the street from my client's house. My client has absolutely nothing to do with it, and he'll testify to that. So having said that, because I guess those are the controversial facts, the first witness I would like to call, with your permission, Madam Chairman, is Daniel Saror, the applicant.
Okay.
Could someone swear him in?
Mr. Saror, can you raise your right hand? And
Yes, sir.
you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth?
I don't know if I'm allowed to swear according to the Jewish law, but
Or do you affirm?
You can affirm.
Excuse me?
You can affirm.
Yes. So
Okay,
I tell you the truth and the whole truth.
thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Saror, you own the property at 107 Parker, correct?
Yes, I do.
And who resides there with you besides your wife?
So I reside there with my wife, and my oldest daughter stays with me. I have 6 children, God bless them. Actually, I have really 12 children because my daughter-in-laws and my son-in-laws are my children. But my oldest daughter took the responsibility to stay with me for the summer. She does the cooking. She looks after my wife, plus with the help that we have aides that take care of her. Unfortunately, she has aggressive multiple sclerosis. She's completely, basically in a wheelchair. She cannot get up on her own. And coming to the Jersey Shore is a breath of fresh air for her, because we were fortunate to build a bedroom on the first floor facing the pool, where she have a ramp to go out that she gets on the pool deck. But unfortunately, she can't see lower when they're in the pool area. But it's nice that she could get out there. She's not in a cage or in a prison. And we want the pool house, not for parties. We want a pool house so we have bathrooms there, so it's accessible with disability for my wife, and also for the children that are in the pool area. And
now, Mr. Saror, I'm going to interrupt you, and I apologize. With the addition of the pool house and the ramp, your wife is actually going to be able to go out onto the pool deck now, correct?
That is 100% correct.
And because of what it involves, she needs access to a bathroom. That's rather critical. She can spend significant time in there, and having the bathroom enables her to not have to worry and have access and to go out, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, in addition to that, your daughter who lives with you, her 6 children are with her as well, correct?
Yes, they're with us. And most of the time they're out in camp. When they come home, they're in the pool. I have a daughter that lives across the street. And she also has a pool. And she also has children. And God bless them, my grandchildren are close. They come back and forth. And most of the older kids don't want to hang out. It's usually the younger kids, which is a minority of, God bless, the over 30 grandkids that I do have.
Is it fair to say that you can have quite the crowd in your backyard with children?
I can have quite a crowd in the first floor bathroom and too many people crowding around my wife in a bedroom. That's for sure.
So
she's very susceptible to, people on top of her.
I understand.
It's good for her.
How many bedrooms are in your house?
We have one which is basically like a hospital room for my wife. Upstairs. 6, 7.
Okay. So including your wife's and yours, there are 8 bedrooms in the house?
Correct.
Okay. And your daughter doesn't live directly across the street. She's catty-cornered across the street, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Can you see me on your TV screen?
Yeah, it's across the street, right?
Yeah, you see that there's a trailer with this camp logo. And when I walked the property yesterday, I called you and you told me that's there often. It's your neighbors, correct?
Yes, he does surfing and I guess he runs the surfing camp.
But you do not have any camp or any surfers or anybody in your backyard. It's all your family or guests.
Responsibility like that. We have camps that we send our grandkids to, like everybody else does, and they have a full day of activity.
Okay. I'm not going to go into I'm sorry. Go on, sir.
I'm the only counselor that's in the pool with my grandkids.
Okay. You're well trained. Now, in addition to the pool and the pool house, there is a concern about the driveway, because when we were here about 3 years ago, we wanted to have 4 spots. The board asked for that. They wanted a certain width of driveway. And you didn't build the 12 foot, you built 10 foot, correct? In width, or 12 feet, correct?
Yes, more narrow.
Why?
I need access for my wife to get out of the car freely. I don't want to have tons of cars in a driveway because I don't have a lot of cars. I have 1 car. It's a business car. It's never there. It's only there in the evening. And I need access that my wife could get out freely because we have to maneuver in and out of a car. Not that simple.
Now,
and that's the reason why for the safety of that.
When your daughter and her husband and you and your wife are home, how many cars are there in the family? Let me rephrase that, including grandchildren who may be old enough to drive. How many cars are there in the family?
There are 2.
Okay. Now I realize that I'm sorry.
Could be a 3rd car. Sorry, 3rd car.
Do you ever have any difficulty with parking on your particular street?
No.
Other than if there's a wedding, a house or 2 down.
Everybody forget about it.
That's everywhere. But other than a situation like that, is there ever difficulty with on-street parking in your area?
No.
Okay. And if the board insists, are you willing to correct this? If they make it a condition of this approval, are you willing to make your driveway 20 feet wide?
If it has to be done, it'll be done. I'd love to keep it the same for my wife, so it's much more easier, but
okay. At this time, I have no further questions from Mr. Saror. If Madam Chairman, you're the board or the public has anything, please.
Do any board members have questions for Mr. Soror?
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
Madam Chair. I just Googled the surf camp and it says that it's a daycare center that's located on Wallace Road in Deal. Is that close by to this applicant's residence?
No,
Okay. My other question is, do you have any affiliation with this camp? Do your own grandchildren go there?
no, I won't let my kids surf unless they're 18 and they want to take it upon themselves. But no, they don't surf.
And they don't attend the daycare that they provide?
No,
Okay.
not a,
Thank you.
You know, just for your information, I may be wrong on this, but I'm surprised Wallace Avenue, that's a really nice street right off of the ocean and Ocean Avenue in Deal, next to the Deal Casino.
Sure.
Camp out of there, that's amazing. But okay.
That's what it says.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway, I apologize. I think there was another board member
Madam
with a
Chair?
question.
Yes, Mr. Fuller.
Just regarding Wallace Ave, that might be just where they meet up on the beach, but that's not a question. That's just something that I thought of. Sir, behind where you're going to put the pool house, behind your lot, you have a couple of houses that that are behind you. Is that right?
couple of what? I didn't hear you.
Houses, residences behind you.
Oh, yes, house, yes.
So what if the pool house is 10 feet away from your property line, what would be like right behind that? Is it somebody's yard? Is it I looked briefly online. It looked like two lots kind of come together. So it almost looks like it would be kind of hidden from those two houses. Is that
Okay.
fair?
We have trees, to protect from the back of me. And the house that's to the side, that little catty corner to me, to the left, is a friend of mine. And it looks like it is more open there between both homes over there.
Okay.
But there is a big backyard in back of me for both homes.
Okay. And then the harder question, and Jim, I'll ask you to maybe to clarify the 12-foot driveway. I know the applicant is offering to make it 20 feet if we make it a condition, but in 2019, when the last application, was that a condition that was put on that application at that time too?
Yes, it was. I do have a question for Mr. Soror in that regard too. When the board is finished asking him questions.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I you guys know me. I really don't like busting chops, but if it was a condition in the past and it wasn't fulfilled, I just get worried. Like saying, okay, we'll make it a condition on this one, because I just don't know how we deal with that. I know Mr. Steinberg is not representing us right now, but it just makes me it's tough for me on that piece a little bit.
Yeah, I have some
Mr. Fuller, if I may just stick in my 2 legal cents. And of course, I'm not advocating something contrary to a client's wishes, but the town has a code enforcement official, and were something to not be done correctly, final approvals aren't written. If things are done in a cavalier manner, then fines can be issued and people can be brought to court with a requirement that corrections be made. So the town does have enforcement applications. I'm not suggesting that it would use it or there would be a problem foreseen, but I mean, that's how it's addressed generally.
Mr. Higgins, were you going to ask
Yeah,
him?
Mr. Soror, just so the board can understand a little bit better, for your wife getting in and out of the car, how does that work? She is in a wheelchair.
She's in a wheelchair.
They're next to the car. Does she get out of the wheelchair and into the car, or do you have a lift that moves her from?
We have 2 people that help her get into the wheelchair. It's a special wheelchair that's made. It's not your ordinary wheelchair.
Okay.
And they have to maneuver, take her. And so they could take, it's hard for her. Her neck is tilted. Unfortunately, she can't lift it up by herself. And the aides also have to feed her.
Yeah. Okay. And so you need what? You need probably 4 to 5 feet in addition outside of your car to get her into the car, right?
I would say for sure 4 to 5 feet because
yes. And I just wanted the board to understand that I have experienced just like his, so I can understand what he's saying. And quite frankly, if you have a 20-foot wide driveway and 2 cars sitting there, there's not going to be enough room to have her get in and out of the car. But if you have a 12-foot wide driveway and move the car over so that you have 5 to 6 feet on one side where they can get in and out of the car, I think that works better. The other point to make is that you can probably fit 3 cars in that driveway, even though there's not 3 legal parking spaces there. And Parker Road is a 75-foot wide right-of-way as opposed to 50-foot for most streets in the township. I did meet in preparing the draft for the master plan. I met with the police, and they had a lot of concern about areas of the township where there was parking on either side of the street because there was not enough room for emergency vehicles to go through if there was a lot of parking on both sides. In this instance, I think the pavement width of Parker is probably close to 40 feet, if not more than that. And if there's cars parked on either side of the street, there's still more than ample room for emergency vehicles. So I don't see a substantial problem with the 12-foot wide driveway. I think it works better for the applicant.
thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hopkins. All right, if there are no questions from the public, perhaps I can call David Feldman, but I don't.
I'm sorry, I didn't ask. Any questions from the public? Okay, please continue.
All right, I would like to call as our next witness, David Feldman, and if he could be sworn in, and then I'll qualify him.
Oh, there you are. Okay, Mr. Feldman, do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you,
And
David.
I'm sorry. Refresh my memory again. Which expert?
He is a licensed architect registered in the state of New Jersey, and he's testified before this board on numerous occasions.
Okay.
And that's just with me.
Please continue.
I ask that the board proffer him and accept him as an expert in the area of architecture.
Yes.
Thank you. David, describe the pool house as it's designed at this time.
If I may, can I share my screen?
Absolutely, go right ahead.
The host needs to enable me.
You should be getting it any second.
Okay, so this is you should be able to see it at this point.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so this was a preliminary drawing of the proposed pool house that was submitted for this application. It was prepared by Feldman and Feldman Architects under my supervision. The first thing I'd like to correct is the square footage of the pool house that Mr. Higgins has stated and Mr. Farber has stated. The pool house itself is a structure that is 16 by 31, which amounts to 496 square feet, not the previous 800 that was testified to or the previous 700 square feet that was testified or mentioned earlier. In addition, Mr. Higgins mentioned that the 700 square feet that he came up with was based on the overhangs of the structure. We actually reduced the overhangs of the structure to a 1 foot overhang, which in turn would make the overall footprint of the building. Instead of 16, it would be 18, and instead of 31, it would become 33. 18 by 33 amounts to just under 600 square feet or 594 square feet, and not the 700 square feet that was mentioned earlier. So I didn't actually do the calculation as to what that comes out to with regards to buildable coverage on the lot, but it would be less than what was previously stipulated as the being 27.1%. So just to get that, on the record. So what we did was we actually created a pool house that was 16 by 31, not including the overhangs. And within that pool house or structure, we created pretty much really 4 elements. We created a lounge area for Mrs. Soror to be able to sit in and under, away from the sun, and still be able to watch, what's going on in the pool at the pool level. We also created a fully accessible handicap bathroom with a handicap roll-in shower. Grab bars will be placed on the walls, and all the amenities associated with a handicap restroom would be incorporated in that. In addition to that, because of the amount of kids, and as Mr. Soror previously testified to, that Mrs. Soror might have times that she's in the restroom for quite some time, we felt the need for a second bathroom for the kids to utilize if she was in there for an extended period of time. In addition to that, we just created a small washer dryer area for all the towels. If you have 30 grandkids using the pool, it kind of made sense. And a little wet bar area with a sink. In addition to that, we tried to, and this originally was designed to be substantially larger based on the needs of Mrs. Soror, but after going back and forth with Mr. Higgins and Mr. Soror, we tightened it up as much as we felt we were able to and still make it functional for their use. We also tried to keep the height of the structure down to a minimum, but at the same time create some interest. So the lounge area at the highest point is 10.5 feet. And then the accessory where the bathrooms, and when I say accessories, the bathroom location and laundry area is at 9.5. So to give some interest to the design. The materials on the outside are going to match the finish of the main home. So it'll be harmonious with what we have presented with the house. As far as the location, I'm gonna quickly share the site plan with you and explain why we located it where we did. So let me just see if I can pull that up now. Okay, you should be able to see the site plan now. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So what we did with the site plan, we really had, given the fact that there were, the house is existing, the pool is existing, we had really 2 locations to choose from. We had the southern location of the property, which is where we opted to do it. We also had the western side of the property where we chose not to do it. The reason we chose the southern property here was twofold. One, as I believe Mr. Fuller questioned earlier, with the 2 homes that are located to the south of this subject property, the properties for those 2 homes come pretty much into the middle of Mr. Soror's property, which is depicted by this dotted line. Lot 2 has a significant backyard of all green area over here. And the house on lot 1 is located more westerly of the property. So looking out this way, there's a lot of green area. The house on lot 11 is situated closer to this property line on the western side of Mr. Soror's property, or the easterly side of lot 11. So we felt that the pool house in this location would create the least obstruction with the existing lots surrounding it. In addition to that, the way the ramp that works coming down off the back patio comes down is because of the height differentiation, we needed a ramp that was almost just over 50 feet in length, closer about 54 feet, 56 feet to be exact. And so what the engineer came up with was a U-shaped ramp that comes down from the east, heading west, and then from the west comes back around to the east. If you notice where the ramp is located, at that point, it doesn't leave you much clearance between the ramp and the pool. And so our thought was to maneuver a wheelchair after coming down the ramp back across this thin area between the ramp and the pool was not a safe condition, and that it made more sense to bring the wheelchair and Mrs. Saror down along this side and then across the back side of the pool, where we were able to still have 6 feet from the cabana to the pool and maintain 10 feet from the cabana to the rear property. Other than that, I don't really have anything else unless somebody has something for me.
I have just one. Can you remove the screen sharing at this point, please? By placing the cabana where you have, and by doing the ramp there, you are eliminating a substantial percentage of the pool decking area. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that sort of is to keep down on coverage and to try and lessen the impact, correct?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Feldman, I don't believe I have any other further questions. Perhaps the board or the public does.
Okay, any questions from the board?
I had two questions. How are you going to condition the pool house? Is there a small condensing unit, a fan that'll be placed outside that's not shown on the site plan?
The intent was to just put a through wall unit.
Okay, so wall hung units.
Yes.
Nothing on a pad outside?
No.
Okay, and then as far as, I guess, lighting is concerned, is there any, I mean, I'm concerned about light pollution being close to the neighbors. You know, what kind of lighting on the outside of the building, facing which direction, that type of thing?
Well, all the lighting would be that any exterior lighting that we would propose would be on the north side facing into the property, and nothing around the
east or west?
East, south, or west, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from board members?
I just have one clarification. Now, the new lot coverage based on the testimony is 26.3%. And if you look at my report on the top of page 3, I talk about the fact what they were proposing was actually a little bit more square footage than would be permitted on a conforming lot. With that change now, what they're proposing is less than the square footage that would be permitted on a conforming lot.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other board members? Anyone from the public have questions? Okay, Mr. Farber.
Thank you, ma'am. The next witness will be Walter Hopkins, licensed engineer of the state of New Jersey. If we could have him sworn in, please.
Mr. Hopkins, do you affirm to tell the truth, the truth?
Yes, I do.
And have you testified before this board?
I have. If you'd like, I can briefly give you my qualifications. I know we're butting up against our time limit here. I'm a licensed professional engineer and planner in the state of New Jersey, engineer in states of New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland. And I have had the pleasure of presenting before this board. In fact, I presented the original home before this board in 2019.
Okay, we will accept.
You be accepted as an expert in engineering, Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Okay, so Mr. Hopkins, before we talk about the pool house, I briefly want to address the HVAC units and then the breakout windows. Can we do that very quickly?
Sure. There are window wells that are situated along both sides. Those provide light and air into the basement. Your ordinance requires a 10-foot side yard setback. I believe your zoning officer has identified that those are in violation of that. So we are 6.5 feet at its closest point to the property line. There's also an AC unit that is at the same, it's 6.5 feet as well. They're in line with the window wells.
Okay. The window wells themselves are primarily subterranean. They're not something that's visible from the street. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So it's not something that is bulky or has any bulk effect. It's more of a ground effect, but it intrudes subterraneanly, correct?
That's correct.
And they also serve a safety purpose. They give egress in an emergency, God forbid, right?
That would be more of an architectural issue. I guess in an emergency situation, it would provide an access.
Okay. As far as the HVAC, there are how many units there to your knowledge?
The survey that we have just shows one. There may be another one that wasn't picked up. The survey wasn't prepared by our office. Oh, I'm sorry. There is one that is in violation. There are 4, but there's only one that is in violation of the ordinance.
Okay. Very good. And how far in is that one in violation? How far?
So the ordinance requires 10 feet. It's 6.5.
Okay. So we would be asking for a variance to permit that. That's been there for 3 years, and I don't know if the code officials heard any complaints, but we would just ask for a variance on that, as well as the window wells. And with regard to the driveway, you heard the testimony, Strike, that you've heard the what Mr. Soror had to say, and you heard the comments of Mr. Higgins. Is there anything you'd care to add to that?
No, just that I would concur with all that was said, that it does have the ability to accommodate 3 vehicles. And given the testimony of Mr. Soroya and Mr. Higgins' support, that it does function better in this specific situation.
Okay. And to your knowledge, it is a 75-foot wide street, and there doesn't appear to be any parking issue, correct?
No, my office is actually close by. I've been by several times and never noticed a parking issue on that street.
Thank you. Let's focus on the pool house. And I guess the first thing we want to talk about is the size percentage.
So as could be expected, Mr. Higgins' calculation was exactly what mine was. I had pre-calculated it before the meeting. I came up with exactly 26.3. Your ordinance with this specific lot being undersized allows for 22, but as Mr. Higgins also indicated, that this is slightly below what would be permitted if it was a conforming lot.
And in terms of the setbacks, the bulk issues are the coverage and the distance from the backyard, correct?
Correct.
Now, there was some testimony by Mr. Feldman of the property located contiguously. Actually, this bisects it, so to speak, because it's smack in the middle. You've taken some measurements and calculations regarding the distance from other the pool house would be to other structures. Can you tell us, please?
Sure, I can, just one other issue, that if this were a smaller, much smaller, probably not functional for this specific circumstance, the town's ordinance does allow for structures that are below 150 square feet to be within 10 feet of the property line, which is what we are in compliance with. So that's kind of what we shot for. I don't have pictures of it with me today, but the property lines are heavily landscaped with arborvitae, a very thick buffer along both sides and rear. If the board would like, I could describe the adjacent properties and show you in an aerial how far they are from the proposed pool house.
Why don't you do that so it's stated for the record?
Rob, we're getting towards the time, so I would like everyone to start moving.
I could just testify that it's 110 feet from the dwelling on lot 2 and 75 feet from the dwelling on lot 1. Okay.
Now, does this lot, the proposed pool house, that talking about C2 provisions that matter, the criteria, first of all, this isn't any use issue. In other words, the pool house is allowed in R2 and it's consistent, correct?
That's correct.
And is there any detriment to the public good by allowing this pool house that you're aware of?
No, due to these specific and unique circumstances associated with this specific property and the applicant, I do not see a negative impact, substantial negative impact.
How does this comport with the Americans with Disability Act, and how does that tie into a C2 variance?
Well, with regard to the pool house, purpose A of the municipal land use law is to encourage, and I'll just paraphrase, municipal action in a manner that's consistent with the moral and general welfare of the public. So clearly in this case, because there's a circumstance that requires some compassion, this allows the board to grant a variance, which in that it advances purpose A of the municipal land use law. The window wells clearly increase light, air, and open space to below grade. And we didn't speak much about the coverage, but the coverage is very well landscaped, and any increase in impervious has been accommodated in an oversized underground detention system that Mr. Matlick's office has reviewed, and I'm aware of no comments.
So one of the main concerns about coverage is obviously water flow, and you have that essentially covered, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. In addition, any other comments you have with regard to this?
No, just that in my opinion, as a professional planner, that these variances can be granted in a C2 flexible C without substantial detriment to the public good, and will not substantially impair the intent and the purpose of the zone plan or the town's zoning ordinance.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions, Madam Chairman, if you're the board or the public.
Okay, board members, any questions? Okay, anyone from the public have questions? Okay, before we close the public hearing, Mr. Higgins, so regarding the air conditioner, the condenser, the driveway, and the bedrooms, do you have any outstanding concerns?
No, I don't. I think there's one other point. Normally, I don't provide testimony on behalf of the applicant, but in this case, I think I do have some special knowledge with regard to this type of situation. And I think this actually advances the purpose of the municipal land use law with regard, purpose G, with regard to providing sufficient space in an appropriate location for a variety of uses, including recreational uses. And the important part of that is that in order to meet the needs of all New Jersey citizens. And I think really this is something that does address the American with Disabilities Act, and I think it helps meet the needs of this specific family. So I think it addresses that purpose also.
Okay, thank you. There's a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
I'll second.
Okay. And Amy, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mrs. Tallarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGennaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
and Madam Chair.
Yes. So if I had to summarize, I believe that it's a C2 variance, and that will cover the maximum building coverage, accessory building setback, and the accessory structure setback. Did I miss anything, Mr. Higgins?
It will be reviewed by a different attorney than Mr. Steinberg, so we don't put him into an uncomfortable situation.
Yeah.
And we covered under any and all variances requested.
One other issue is that the de minimis exception from the residential site improvement standards for the number of parking spaces.
Okay, we will include that. Thank you. Will someone offer?
I will offer that positive resolution.
Is there a second?
Second.
Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mrs. Tallarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGennaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes. Okay,
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, experts, everyone, thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful evening and a good weekend.
Thank you.
And happy Father's Day.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, our second case is Barbara Crane, Block 9, Lot 36.05, 39 Larchwood Avenue, Ocean, Zone R1. This is an application to place the generator in the side yard setback where 10 feet is required and 6.7 feet is proposed. And Ms. Crane, are you here? I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Barbara Crane.
Mark is here.
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, okay. Mr. Okay, I see you now. Mr. Crane, if you can raise your right hand.
Yep.
And do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth?
I do.
You can state your name and your address, please.
Sure. My name is Mark Schramm. My wife is Barbara Schramm, and we live at 39 Larchwood Avenue in Oakhurst, Ocean Township.
Okay.
And we actually had proposed a variance on my side yard to install a generator for my family. And at the advice of my electrician and his plumber, they asked me to actually file for that variance so we can actually put it in the most convenient and proper location for its installation. So that's pretty much what I did. The generator itself,
Okay,
I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Mr. Schramm, can you just hold on just one second? I just want to hear from Mr. Higgins. So if he has any concerns, you can address them as well as Mr. Matlack, if you don't mind.
Not at all, please.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Higgins.
I don't have any significant concerns with this one. The most important part of my report says if this is the most appropriate location for the generator for functional reasons, it appears that there is a hardship in this instance, since while the residence legally exists, it does not meet the required 20-foot setback, and it is not possible to locate the generator in a conforming location adjacent to this side of the house. The applicant should provide testimony as to why it is most appropriate to locate the generator as shown, as opposed to another location on the site that is conforming. And I think the applicant was starting to go towards that explanation. And I don't see any substantial detriment.
Okay, Mr. Matlack.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I noted pretty much the same thing that Mr. Higgins did in my report. I also noted that the survey provided, the plan provided, shows several other proposed improvements. It appears that the plan was taken more as a reference point and the generator was hand drawn onto it, but I just like clarification from the applicant that it's only the generator that's being proposed at this time and not the other improvements that are shown as proposed on the plan submitted.
Yes, that's correct. It's only the generator that we're proposing.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Schramm, can you address Mr. Higgins? Sorry, you were beginning to
yes.
testify to that.
So yes, so in discussing the location with the electrician and his plumber for the installation of the gas, and actually the gas meter is directly adjacent to that location, and the going through the home, it's a straight shot to our electrical panel. So for the installation of it, that would be, you know, from their perspective, the best location for it. And therefore they asked me to actually put in for that variance to put it there. So I did. There are really not many other locations that would be as easy to install it. So, you know, we've been waiting, you know, this amount of time just to file for the variance and get it so we could do the installation.
Okay, thank you. Any board members with questions?
I can talk now.
Oh.
wasn't easy not to open my mouth on a whole application. I think we also do condition these generator, if the board so grants it, on testing at certain hours. Daylight hours and 9 to 5 type situations. I have a standard clause if the board should approve it, that the testing be done at those times, not to interfere with neighbors.
Sure, that would not be an issue for me at all.
Any board members with questions? Anyone from the public with questions? Okay, motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close.
Second.
Okay, please call the roll.
Yes. Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mrs. Tallarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGennaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
and Madam Chair.
Yes. And I believe that we're looking for a C variance with the condition of testing during daylight hours.
Yes, see where it's a side yard setback of 6.7 when 10 is required.
I'll offer positive resolution.
I'll second.
Second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mrs. Tallarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGennaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes. Okay, thank you. And best of luck, Mr. Schramm.
Thank you so much, everybody. Good night.
Good night. Next case, Raymond Saka, block 40.02, lot 17, 502 Deal Road, Ocean, Zone R3. This is an application for a pre-existing non-conforming property to construct front and rear additions, as well as a rear pergola within the front and rear yard setbacks. The attorney is Mr. David Esses. Mr. Esses?
Mr. Estes had given me an email a couple days ago that said he was thinking about pulling off, but neither Amy nor I have received that. We'll reach out to him, I guess, tomorrow. I guess he could not make it this evening.
What are the time limitations on this?
He had 2 applications on for tonight. I thought the 199 Highwood was not going forward, but this one was.
You know what I'm saying, but when do we declare this complete? Do you know? I just want to, the time limits in which the board must act.
Oh, I don't know off the top of my head.
What is it, 190 days, Jim, from declaration of complete, because there's variances? 180?
Oh, yeah, I think it's 190.
Yeah. So do you think it's been more than 6 months since this has been deemed complete?
No.
No. Okay. And I'm sure if you speak to Mr. Estes, he'll give you a time waiver retroactive to tonight to the next meeting. He'll give that to you. All right. So we're going to carry it to the next meeting. Is that what you want to do?
Please.
Yes.
So we'll
Yes, please.
carry to July 21st.
It'll be carried to July, is it 21st? And there will, subject to a time extension with no further public notice or publication required.
Okay. Next case, Kenneth Tawil, block 12.07, lot 5, 7 Oakwood Avenue, Ocean, Zone R4. This is an application to convert a pre-existing non-conforming detached garage to a cabana, which does not meet the required front, side, and rear yard setbacks. Applicant also adding variances for an existing pool patio and pool equipment within the required 30 feet front yard, as well as a paver patio constructed without the benefit of a permit. And Mr. Tawil, are you here?
Hi.
Yes.
You guys hear me?
Yes. Can you state your name and address?
Sure. Kenneth Tawil, 7 Oakwood Avenue, Oakhurst, New Jersey.
And do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth?
I affirm.
And if I can hear from Mr. Higgins.
Yeah, I'll read my report. It's very short. The applicant proposes to convert an existing garage to a pool house. No substantial changes are proposed for the site, although the garage pool house will be reconstructed to include a great room and laundry, as separately accessed bathroom with a shower and a storage room. Modifications to the proposed pool house also include a change of the roof, which will increase the building coverage from 327 feet to approximately 450 square feet. This increases the building coverage to approximately 25%, which remains conforming. No other changes are proposed. The site is 100 by 110,000 square foot lot that is occupied by a single family residence, a pool, and a detached garage. A technical bulk variance is necessary for the setback of the existing accessory building proposed pool house. Accessory structure setback. The ordinance requires that any accessory structure over 150 square feet and 10 feet in height meet the required setbacks of the principal building. The proposed pool house is approximately 450 square feet and has a height of 13.25 feet, which requires a 30-foot rear yard setback. The existing proposed rear setback is 2.6 feet. This is an existing condition, but a new variance is triggered by the change of the use from the structure and the increased roof area. Given the configuration of the legally existing structures and the buildings on the site, there's no reasonable location on the site to construct a new pool house. Additional information, the zoning information on chart A1, on page A1 incorrectly shows the building coverage as being unchanged. This should be corrected to reflect the new building coverage, which created the new roof overhang of the accessory building. It should be noted that while the new overhang is included in the calculation for the building coverage, the overhang is less than 2 feet, and as such is not included in the calculation for building setback. Consequently, the building setback remains unchanged, and the less than 2 foot overhang will not encroach on the adjacent property since the building is set back more than 2 feet. There were other issues apparently with existing structures requiring variances. I was not aware of them when I did the report, so I did not address them.
Thank you, Mr. Matlack.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A few things on this. This again was a plan that was iterated a few times, and we prepared a few reports. Our last report, the comments are that the applicant's engineers clarified the proposed paving is consisting of pavers that match the existing pavers around the pool, but the note on there is shown as pavers constructed on over mulch, which is an improper subbase. So a detail for that paver, it should be shown on the plans. They also need to clarify if additional retaining walls are proposed along the areas of the new pavers, and should clarify if the proposed plan complies with section 21-48.3 of the ordinance regarding the combined height of fence and retaining wall. They have indicated that there's a need for a small retaining wall. It should be shown on the plans as well as construction details. I'd also like to find out if there are proposed utility connections for the pool house, where those coming from and being connected to, and if the existing tree adjacent to the pool house will remain, or if that needs to be taken down.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Towell, if you can tell us about your request and
Madam Chair, before we go,
yes.
Jim alluded to it. Our zoning officer also reported that he needs a variance as to the setback to the pool equipment, to the pavers, pool side, pool equipment, side and rear variances for the pool. I guess the pool was placed there without. We need some explanation how the pool got to be in a location that's needs variances.
Okay, Mr. Towell.
Hi, okay, my name is Ken Towell. Thank you for hearing my case tonight. Bought the house in 2013. We're a family of 5. We hired a pool contractor to build us a swimming pool in 2021. We applied for the permit. We were issued the permit. Apparently the pool equipment was built within the setback, which I was unaware of. I pretty much gave the job over to my pool contractor, who was a general contractor. And when I submitted my as-built, I learned that the pool equipment was within the setback, so it became a pre-existing condition. The reason why we'd like to convert the garage to a pool house is right now our home is I think it's classified as a 2-bedroom, 1-bath home on the main floor. And one of the benefits of the pool house would be that we'd gain an extra bathroom. You know, as I mentioned, I have 3 children, we're a growing family. Also, you know, we come out here as a summer resident. We love it down here, and just adding a pool house would just make the outdoors so much more beneficial to us. Also to mention, the garage right now, you know, it's an existing structure. It's pretty old. We don't use it really much. There's grass before the garage, so we don't ever pull cars over the grass. It's just pretty much like dead space. So it would be great if we'd be permitted to turn it into something we could enjoy as a family more. So I hired a architect named Donald Passman. You guys might have heard of him. I hired him to be an expert witness tonight to help describe my application and help out with that. Any other questions for me?
You said you have, is Mr. Passman here?
Yeah, Don.
So before
I'm here. You can swear me in and I'll be able to testify for him.
Oh, there you are. Sorry, Hollywood swears here. Okay, Mr. Passman, do you affirm the
Chair, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I didn't get it. I did have a question. I'm looking at a map, sir. I'm trying to just take the what's in the packet versus like what I'm looking at. Did you recently build your house and then put a pool where a house used to be? Is that?
No. The house is original, I think, from 1960s. It's a ranch. My side yard where the pool is now is just an empty lot, just, you know, grass and weeds. So there was nothing on that part of the land. It's probably about like 50 by 100 of just empty space.
Okay. And as you're on the street, are you looking at it? The house is on the right and the pool's on the left?
The pool, when I'm facing the street, the pool's on the left. And then there is my neighbor who's separated by, you know, trees and land and, you know, whatnot. But there's to the right is my house, looking out to the street. Sure. And I have photos to show that to you guys if you like later on in the hearing.
And just one additional comment with regard to the pool equipment. That appears to be the pool filter. And while it is technically, it's in the required front yard, the existing residence is actually also within the required front yard. And the pool equipment is behind the front setback of the existing residence. So it doesn't jut out into the yard in front of the existing residence.
Thank you. Mr. Passman?
Yes.
You affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth?
Yes, I do.
And I believe you have testified before the board, correct?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Many times.
Yes, please provide your testimony.
Okay, so first thing I want to clear up is that there's this existing 2-car garage is not being altered in any way in its footprint or its roofed area. I don't know where Mr. Higgins thought that the roof is being larger or bigger or whatever. It's the same hip roof that's there now is what we're keeping. So I'd like to clarify up right away. There's no change. No change in footprint, no change in area, no change in building area, percentage or otherwise. So can everybody agree on that for me? Now, so given that, yes, it was a 2-car garage. We're taking out the garage doors and putting in sliding doors that are shown on my drawings, which were submitted. We're converting one little area so it's a bar seating, and it'll probably be closed up, have shutters to close it in the off season. And in the back part of the structure, there's a storage area for bicycles and pool, you know, toys. And then there's also a full bathroom, meaning a shower, a toilet, and a sink. And the shower is just to shower off, you know, if you're in the pool and not get the chlorine off. And then there's a small kitchenette and a little laundry area. So it's multi-purpose for the size that it is, which is 327 square feet. We got a lot in there, and there's a little bit of an area to play in or to have a table. And it does relate, it opens up the wall toward the pool, so you can have a bar seating kind of area there. So very simple. I mean, it's the same structure. It just has a different use. So I just want to talk about the pool structure first. I can then talk about any paving or anything else you'd like to talk about afterwards. If you have any questions on the pool house.
I'm sure, just one question, sorry.
Yeah.
There's going to be laundry in the pool house?
Well, there's a stackable washer dryer, so you can put the towels in there and so forth.
Where will that be vented to? Which direction?
The venting of the...
will there be a venting of the dryer?
You can go straight up through the roof.
Okay.
Any other board members with questions about the pool house?
I have a question, Madam Chair, if that's all right.
Yes.
Are the utilities, the water and sewer, is that going to tie right into the house?
I believe we can tie that in either on the outside or the inside. It's probably maybe better to go outside along the grass and Y into the existing sewer. I didn't really investigate the existing basement or crawl space.
Yeah.
So if it had to, it could tie in that direction as well.
But you're not proposing new services from the street?
No, it'll tie into the same service that's connected to the street.
Okay. And same with electric?
Electric will tie in, probably put a sub panel in this pool house on the left-hand side of it, which is the north side, inside wall, and we'll run an underground conduit to get power from the main house into the pool house.
Okay. And how does that, putting those utilities in, how does that affect the tree that I mentioned that's...
well, I'm sure we'll be able to work around it. That tree isn't in the way of anything, really.
Okay.
Should be all right.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions regarding the pool house? Okay, please continue.
Well, the other piece of what we're doing is we're adding some paving. We're proposing some additional paving around the swimming pool. And part of it does make it allow the existing paving to connect to this pool house, the opening that's facing the swimming pool and behind where the bathroom door is. So there's some there. And then my client asked me, can we wrap it around, because he feels like it's safer to have more paving around the south side of the pool. There's actually a raised area of the swimming pool that's a waterfall type feature for water to supply into the pool. And with that being raised up, if you walk around it, there's not much paving. So adding this other couple of feet of paving would allow for the kids to run around that piece, if they're running around. And same with the back. So in this construction, again, it was completed when I came onto the job, and there's drainage around it. And I guess I got approval for all the drainage. That drainage would just move either south or east, depending on how far, which direction you're looking at, with the additional paving, and will be the same. It's not that much additional paving that we're asking for. And it still conforms to the requirement of the ordinance. It's at 86.9% of the buildable lot area, whereas it exists as being about 78%. So it's about 760 square feet additional. And it just runs around the east side and across down on the south side. You can see it on my drawing.
Any questions from the board regarding the pavers? Okay.
I have a question, Madam Chair, regarding the wall and the fence. Will that be higher than 6 feet, the combined height?
All right, I'm not sorry. Can you say that louder? I'm sorry.
Yeah, the existing and proposed new walls and fence, is that going to comply with the ordinance, or is that going to exceed 6 feet?
The retaining walls are already there.
Yeah.
And they do conform, obviously. I think they got permits and approvals on that part of it. This paving is going to go up to it. Sorry.
The fence is there also, right?
Yes, the fence is existing.
Ben, I did look at that when I went out to the site, and it's conforming because the fence is actually below the wall, not on top of the wall.
Right.
Okay.
So, yeah, so that does conform.
Okay, I thought maybe I misread the plan. It looked like there was a proposed Allen block wall, so my apologies.
Yeah, I had the same concerns too, which is why I went out and I took a very, very good look at it just to make sure. And then Don, you finished, Ben? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that's it.
The only other issue is, can you just briefly discuss the existing paving and the pool equipment that's located within the required front yard, and explain to the board that that paving and that equipment is actually behind the front setback of the existing building?
That is correct. There's actually a little covered roof in the front of the house, but the main part, which is 20 feet away, 20.5, the main part of the house is at 24.18 feet from the property line. And when I get the survey, I see that it's 25.55 feet to the paving edge of the front. And the pool filter, that's to the paving. And the pool filter slab is about 27 feet. So both are behind the front line of the house. There was another thing that was in a report on the northeast corner of the house, and this is sort of just north of the existing garage / proposed pool house. There's some paving that's there. That's been there before my client owned the house, according to him, and according to the old surveys, and that does not conform with the setbacks for paving, but it's a pre-existing condition. Nothing's being added to it. Nothing's being taken away. It's a very nice paver patio, shielded with some bushes and trees. So I just want to bring that up, that's already part of this application, but it's a pre-existing nonconformity.
Any other questions from board members or any other testimony, Mr. Passman, at this time? No? Okay, Mr. Tawil?
Yes.
Do you have any other testimony regarding your application?
That's it.
Okay.
I think if you went by the site, just to make a conclusion piece, that Mr. Towell has done a really beautiful job with the fence. It's a nice looking state fence in front. The paving is beautiful, and there's a lot of landscaping. From the curb, it rises up to this pool, and along that rise is the lawn is well kept, and there's some beautiful landscaping. So it really, you don't impact any of that visually from the street.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the public? Okay, motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi?
Yes.
Mrs. Tallarico?
Yes.
Mr. DeGennaro?
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes. So this is for a technical bulk variance for accessory building setback and accessory structure setback, correct?
Right. The rear yard setback is 2.6 feet when 10 feet is required, but it's the same building. It's just being repurposed basically. And then there's some additional, the paving and the pool equipment also are set back in front and side yards, but some are pre-existing, and all of which front-wise are behind the front of the house because the house is into the setback. That's what the variances would be required.
Okay, someone offer?
I'll offer a positive resolution.
Second.
Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi?
Yes.
Mrs. Tallarico?
Yes.
Mr. DeGennaro?
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
and Madam Chair.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank
Appreciate your time.
So,
Have a great night. Bye-bye.
Good night. Before we begin the next case, does any board member need a 2-minute break, or can we keep going? Ron, I can see you trying to.
I'm going there. I do believe like a 3-minute, 5-minute break for everyone. We're going to go into the case that will be also a special case meeting next week. So if you don't mind, can everybody
take a 5-minute break? Let's come back at 9 o'clock, please. Okay, I have 9 o'clock, and I believe we need to do a roll call. Amy, if you can please call the roll again.
Mr. Fuller? Mr. Fuller? Mr. Ashkenazi?
Here.
Mrs. Tallarico?
Here.
Mr. DeGennaro? Mr. Puglielli?
Here.
Madam Chair.
Here. Next case is Larchwood Minion, Block 8.02, Lot 3 and 23, 48 Larchwood Avenue, Ocean, Zone R1. This is an application to expand the existing synagogue building and construct an additional accessory building for use as a mikveh and any other related site improvements. Many variances are required, as well as some waivers. Some variances are listed below. And do I need to read them, Mr. Steinberg?
No, they're posted on our agenda. And they're part of the notice that was made by the applicant, which, by the way, I have reviewed and found service to be adequate and jurisdiction appropriate before the board.
Okay, and I believe that Ms. Krimko is the attorney.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Jennifer Krimko here on behalf of the applicant, the Larchwood Minion, or Mignon. Just by way of opening, before we dig into it, I just wanted to put a couple things on the record. The first is, as you know, this is 48 Larchwood. This is the location where a synagogue was approved back in 2013, and then an amended approval in 2014.
Why out here?
Yeah. Could someone ask Mr. Gazarovski to please mute his?
Yes, Amy, can you please mute? Or thank you.
All right, thanks. Back in 2013, and as you'll see from the evidence that we're going to present you, the community around has grown dramatically. I thank you for the 5 minutes in between, because it gave us the opportunity here in my conference room to go through the list of participants, and I'm proud to say that there is probably about 120 congregants here in support. I don't want you to get afraid of the numbers. We recognize all of the names, and they were here because they wanted each other's support. While they recognize they might not have the opportunity to speak at today's meeting if we don't finish, they wanted to be here so the board knew how important this was to them. I will clarify that the application itself referenced that we were looking to eliminate conditions 6, 8, and 9. And that was a bit of an overstatement. I just want to clarify, my notice, it lists exactly the conditions that we're seeking to eliminate. As you're going to hear through the testimony, when this started, it was a much smaller community, and it has grown exponentially. And as a result, there is a need to fulfill the religious needs of this community in order to expand it from just on holidays and on what we commonly call Shabbat to 7 days a week. You're going to hear testimony about how, at least primarily since COVID, it has expanded, albeit without the appropriate approvals. Part of that, we apologize, and you're going to hear, is because we had an application pending for about a year that was withdrawn when it was discovered it wasn't going to be able to be heard due to COVID. So with all of that, and before we really break into it, I'd like to move a bunch of things into evidence so they're all part of the record. I know Amy has allowed me to share my screen already, so when we get to it, I will certainly put it up. So if you don't mind, Madam Chair, I'm just going to go through the list of exhibits. All of them are on file with the board. A1 is the site plan, revised through 2/8/22. A2 is the survey, revised through 7/26/21. A3 is the architectural plans, revised through 11/19/21. A4 are the drainage maps, revised through 12/3/21. A5 is the traffic parking assessment, dated March 25th, 2022. A6 is the stormwater management report, December 21. A7 is an aerial map exhibit dated 6/6/22. A8 is a site plan rendering dated 6/16/22. A9 is the 2013 congregation exhibit dated 5/10/22. And A10 is the 2022 congregation exhibit dated 6/16/22. So with that, I know that, and I'll defer to the board, I know that oftentimes in some of the larger applications, while it is the general process that the board has their experts read their reports into the record, when it is a large application with multiple witnesses, oftentimes they defer that until the end. So I'll ask the board chair what her pleasure is.
Yes, please continue and we'll defer.
Okay, thank you. And one other question that I think needs to be addressed. There are two attorneys here representing neighbors. One is Ron Gazarovski, who you see, and the other is his daughter, Alexis Gazarovski, different firms. They're representing different neighbors. I was requested by Alexis Gazarovski before the meeting that rather than have question answer after each witness, she requested of me and then of Mark Steinberg that all of my witnesses put in their affirmative testimony without any questions being asked. And then at the end, she and the public would have an opportunity to cross-examine. And when I explained to her that that was at the board's discretion, and she asked Mr. Steinberg, I understand Mr. Steinberg said it's up to the applicant. So what I told her is ultimately it's the board's decision, but the applicant would accept that provided all public questions waited until the end, including Mr. Gazarovski and any members of the public. If there is going to be cross-examination after each witness, I would ask that all members of the public do so. So I'm just asking for uniformity. The applicant has no preference.
Okay. It would probably, if no one objects, be easiest to permit the applicant to present her entire case, and then Mr. Gazarovski and Ms. Gazarovski separately would have the ability to cross-examine each witness in bulk, basically. So I assume all witnesses will be returned to any further hearings. And of course, at that time, any of the public who want to cross-examine these witnesses would also have their opportunity to ask questions. So it would be all applicant and then objectors or concerned citizens thereafter. The only differential would be is that I believe that board members can ask questions of the individuals as they witnesses to clarify things.
Of course.
So if Mr. and Ms. Gazarovski are acceptable to that, I would suggest that to the board. Is that okay, Trawanda?
It's okay with me. Are there any objections from any board members?
And even for the public's benefit, it makes it easier because sometimes when one witness you have questions of, the next witness will give those answers. So you can hear the entire application as a whole and then do any questions thereafter. Okay, so I guess we're going to follow that procedure.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, great. And just so the board members know to direct questions as we go through, I want to let you know who's going to be testifying tonight. And should we not finish tonight, and knowing you cut off at 10:30, it's pretty unlikely. At the special hearing, which I understand is scheduled for 6 p.m. on Thursday, the 23rd, also via Zoom. I have Isaac Mastery here. He is a member of the Board of Trustees of the synagogue. I have Matt Sharrow. He is a licensed professional engineer and he'll be testifying in that capacity. I have John McCormick. He is a licensed professional engineer with expertise in traffic engineering and he'll be testifying in that capacity. I have Tom McHugh. He is a licensed architect and he will be testifying in that capacity. And finally, I have Paul Greigel, who is a licensed professional planner, and he will be testifying in that capacity. I actually shared the names with you in the order in which I intend to present them. So in case the board members have questions that think it might be more appropriate for another witness, you can certainly ask me or I can just let you know that. So with that, I'd like to introduce Isaac Masry, have him sworn.
John, you're off mute.
Madam Chair Lady, I would like to make an opening comment, if I may, before we proceed.
Unless it's procedural, Madam Chair, I would accept the opening comment.
Yeah.
Mark, wait, everyone.
Right, at this point, we let the applicant put in the case. You have a procedural question, Mr. Gazarovski?
Yes, I do. My procedural question is, at the very onset of this application and this hearing, I object to the form and nature of the notice which was provided to the public because I believe it is not satisfactory, and I would further submit that because of the deficiencies in the notice, that at this particular time, the board does not have jurisdiction to proceed forward and hear this case because the notice itself is deficient.
Okay, and I read the notice, I reviewed the notice, I approved the notice. I don't know what areas you're talking about.
Well, if you allow me to proceed, I will attempt to perhaps, I would say this with, great respect for you, Mr. Steinberg, that there are deficiencies in the notice, and I would like to out them prior to the commencement of this hearing.
Okay, go ahead, come with that.
Okay. First of all, and I think it was perhaps just through inadvertence, that in the application itself, when the applicant is questioned as to whether or not there were prior appeals, well, obviously, Ms. Krimko acknowledges that there was back in 2013.
I have to object. That is not a notice question. He's saying there's a deficiency with the application. I'd ask him to limit his comments only to those deficiencies he believes are in the notice. He is now critiquing the application. It's inappropriate. There is no jurisdictional requirement for the application.
Thank you, Ms. Krimko. I happen to agree with you. You said you have an objection to the notice, which would affect jurisdiction.
Yes.
What else?
So may I proceed?
Yeah, but I'm not interested in what you feel is wrong in the application. You said the notice is not.
Yeah, the notice is deficient because when one looks at the notice, and I have it before me, there's a reference in the notice to the prior application, and in generic terms, the applicant says, in the prior approvals, numerous conditions, including prayer use, et cetera, were noticed. She does not reflect in her notice that the prior resolution of approval was in fact the result of an agreement, and the prior application and the prior resolution lists specific conditions from which she is seeking relief from, but did not provide notice to the public.
Well,
for example,
number one, we're talking about a notice, and basically on the Perlmutter case, if the notice contains sufficient information to basically tweak the public as to anything that they're concerned about, they have the ability to come and review all of the plans, all of the applications, all of the previous variances granted. And I believe that this notice is sufficient for those purposes.
Well, let me point out one thing, if I may. In the prior resolution of approval is one of the specific conditions which is reflected being filed with the county. And number 6 specifically says, if the house of worship on Lawrencewood Avenue ever seeks to expand, it can only expand on lot 23 and not onto lot 3. Any expansion of lot 23 must receive zoning board of adjustment approval. Prior to that, there's a specific provision that lot 3 cannot be developed for any use other than just simply a walkway. The public was not apprised of that fact. That is one of the paramount issues in this case, because you are being called upon to make a decision predicated upon the removal of those conditions. And the ability of this applicant to now seek to develop lot number 3. The public was never apprised of that fact because that was not included in basically a generic reference to an earlier approval. If you're being called, may I finish, please? And I respect.
Jennifer, let him finish.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
He's eating up time on purpose.
Let him finish. Go ahead. You're eating up time arguing. Let him finish.
Yeah, Mr. Steinberg, I appreciate that. And my comment is not directed to you because you did not prepare the notice. The notice application refers to an earlier resolution of approval. That earlier resolution of approval, which in fact was agreed to by the parties, including this present applicant, was made a part of the resolution. Those restrictions were filed with the clerk in Monmouth County. And there's a specific provision in number 1, for example, it says, block 802, lot 3 will be utilized for the walkway from Old Farm Road to lot 23. Well, that the public's not being told of that in this notice. Goes on to say that if lot
I think that your objection is noted. You can appeal my decision or the board's decision at some point, but I feel that the application and the notice provided for this application is more than sufficient to meet the requirements of the law to put the public on notice.
Mr. Steinberg, I respect your opinion. I think you're incorrect, but if that's your decision, I'll live with that. And perhaps we'll have it resolved at a later venue in a different court. Thank you.
You're welcome. Ms. Krimko, you may proceed.
Is Mr. Gazarovski done with his objections? If so, I'd ask him to put himself on.
Mr. Steinberg, I don't want to go through this entire hearing with those cheap shots. I said I would abide by your decision.
I appreciate it. I know, I appreciate it. Do you have any other procedural issues?
To go on mute.
Do you have? I understand. Do you have any other procedural issues you want to address at this point?
I do not at this particular point.
Okay. And Ms. Gazarovski, how about you? You're okay? Procedural issues.
I apologize. Procedural issues, I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay, so I ask everyone to mute themselves except for the applicant, its attorney, and the witnesses. It just makes it easier. Thank you. Ms. Krimko.
I'm waiting for Ms. Gazarovski to mute her father's computer. Thank you. Okay, again, if I may introduce Isaac Masry and have him sworn or affirmed.
May I make one further note? I think it's improper for me to be muted because if I wish to object to a question being posed, I'm unable to do so.
Ron, you can unmute yourself at any point in time.
Gazarovski.
But okay, we just need everyone muted at this point. If you have an objection, you could certainly unmute at that point.
All right, just raise your hand and somebody will unmute you, right? We can do that too.
Thank you.
May I also just add one comment?
Please stop.
I have an objection. Ms. Krimko keeps referencing, you know, that I'm Mr. Gazarovski's daughter or that I have to unmute my father's computer. We're separate law firms. Our clients have no relationship with each other. And for the purposes of this hearing, we can simply ignore any familiar relationship and refer to him as Mr. Gazarovski and Mrs. Gazarovski and understand the fact that he doesn't know how to use the Zoom. So yes, I will be sticking my hand over to mute and unmute.
Duly noted, Ms. Krimko. No, just hold off the comments. It makes it easier.
I will
please proceed.
Only as Ms. and Mr. Gazarovski.
Yeah, fine. Just proceed.
Sure. So again, I'd like to introduce Isaac Masry, have him sworn or affirmed.
Jawanda?
Yes, Mr. Masry, will you raise your right hand and do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth?
I do.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Ooh. Bear with me. Okay. Isaac, just speak up so they can hear. So I've asked Isaac, what we noted when we came in to the planning board for an Orthodox funeral home, we noted that the board members were unfamiliar with the practices of the Orthodox Jewish community. It is common as it is here in our area. And we found it to be very helpful to have a member of that community to basically give some background with regard to the needs of the community and what they're doing. So before we get into the nuts and bolts and I present the engineering and we start looking at plans, I've asked Isaac to please talk to the board, in that he's one of the founding members of this synagogue, and talk about where we were in 2013, what agreements were made then, as well as where we are looking to be now in 2022. So I'm going to turn it over to Isaac.
Thank you, Jennifer. First, I would like to thank you for volunteering and taking your time tonight. I too am a volunteer and would like to give you a brief background on myself and my history in Ocean Township. I grew up across the street from the Ocean Township Municipal Building, right off of Monmouth Road on Parker Avenue. I lived there for the first 25 years of my life and attended the nearby Magen David West Deal Synagogue. My wife and I chose to raise our family in New Jersey and fell in love with a home on Larchwood Avenue in Oakhurst and purchased it in 2001. We still live there today. We have since purchased several homes in the area with the hopes our children will continue to live nearby in Oakhurst. My brother and sister also have homes on Larchwood Avenue in Oakhurst. Our family is deeply invested in Ocean Township with our ownership and redevelopment of the Seaview Square Mall and Cobblestone Village. I'm vice president of the Hillel Yeshiva and have been involved in the early stages of DSN. I'm also a volunteer to Monmouth Medical and Jersey Shore hospitals as a patient advocate, amongst other hospitals in Philadelphia and New York. This past Monday night, I had the honor to be along with a few others for our work for the citizens of Ukraine. We were able to raise over $8 million and assisted over 23,000 women and children escape the bombings. I grew up playing baseball on Logan Road in the Ocean Township Little League. And I'm proud to announce that my 10-year-old son, Jack, won the majors this past Tuesday night. We have a deep love and commitment to Ocean Township, and we are grateful that we were blessed to live here. Please allow me now to explain why we are here today. There are various terms used to describe a synagogue. They all basically mean the same thing: shul, synagogue, minyan, kanis, bet knesset, among others. Shul is the shortest, so I'll refer to it as a shul going forward. My grandfather, who I didn't have the privilege to know, was not a wealthy man. He was a peddler who did whatever he could do for his family. His family of 6 lived in a 1-bedroom home. The 3 most important things in his life was keeping his family close, love for his community, and religion, or more specifically, making sure his children attended shul. He was what we call the gabbai of the shul. He was the first one to unlock the doors and last to leave, but not before cleaning it and putting away all the books. He did this also as a volunteer. The term synagogue, the Jewish term for synagogue, is bet knesset, and the literal interpretation is house of gathering. He knew the importance of having his children attend synagogue. He believed the basis of the Jewish religion and its traditions could only be nourished in shul. It's a place of gathering to meet community members and friends, pray, give charity, learn, and so much more. He passed this down to my father, who runs his synagogue in Florida and is well known for his ability to run a shul. Like my dad and my grandfather, my day always starts at shul. We have 3 prayers set every day: 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, and in the evening. The afternoon and evening are combined and done at the same time. During the weekday, I try to arrive to shul at around 6:10 a.m. with about 15 others to learn Talmud with the rabbi. At 7 a.m., we begin to pray for the morning service. The weekday prayers are quick and usually only take about 40 minutes, since most run out to get to work. After prayers, some stay for a quick learning session with the rabbi, and within 20 minutes or so, they all leave. Typically, only men attend the weekday prayers, since kids pray in the school and the women are busy getting their children ready for school. There are about 25 people there in the morning. The afternoon prayers last about 30 minutes, and the start times vary with the sunset times. When we built the shul 7 years ago, we sold seats, so each member can sit in their same seat every day. This is actually a separate mitzvah, a separate commandment, to pray in the same place every morning. I would like to note, excuse me 1 second, I'm sorry. Additionally, I'd like to note that we, over the last few years, we did operate 7 days a week when we said we wouldn't. The neighborhood began to fall in love with and had a strong desire to pray daily with the rabbi. Additionally, as more families moved to the Jersey Shore year-round and more people were working from home as a result of COVID, we planned on making that request within the application in 2019, but our meeting was postponed for COVID. While we waited for the township to return to live meetings, we took the opportunity to prepare the revised plans you see before you today. Friday night begins the Sabbath. As you might be aware, the Sabbath brings on many rules and restrictions, all in place to honor the day and try to forget the weekday activities. We don't drive cars, we don't use the phone, we don't use electric, amongst other restrictions. The Sabbath begins Friday night, 18 minutes prior to sunset, and ends Saturday night, 40 minutes after sunset. We bring in the Sabbath with a longer Friday evening prayer, which takes about an hour. Saturday morning, it's the highlight of the week. Approximately 300 men, women, and children attend. Children prepare to read special parts of the Torah, which is our Bible written on a special parchment and cased in a silver casing. Saturday mornings, prayers start around 8 a.m. and last until 10 a.m. The entire congregation then sits for breakfast, and the rabbi provides an inspirational speech. Again, no one drives on the Sabbath, so congregants either walk or ride their bike. This lasts until about 10:45, and everyone leaves. We return back Saturday afternoon, and again, the actual time changes with the time of the year. It begins with a learning session and then a prayer. We have more learning and then pray again. The Sabbath ends 40 minutes after the sunset. Approximately 60 people attend the afternoon service. We've tried our best to welcome all who would like to attend, and unlike most other synagogues, we don't even charge a membership fee. In the past, we have not accommodated many brises or bar mitzvahs for several reasons. One, we don't have and don't plan on having a social hall or a commercial kitchen. We don't charge if someone wants to use the synagogue, so it's not a financial income generator either. We've had a few in the past, but only if a special condition exists. Our current application provides for approval to conduct the bris, a circumcision, and a bar mitzvah, the age a boy or a girl accept their commandments on their own. Over the past 9 years, we've had very few of these events. They also rarely occur on a Sunday, because the bar mitzvah boy would want to read from the Torah, and we don't bring out the Torah on a Sunday, unless it's a holiday or the beginning of the Jewish month. The bris, the circumcision, these are also very rare. I believe we had only 2 over the past 9 years, and both were under special circumstances. As I mentioned, I moved into my home with my wife in 2001. We had our first child, my son Danny, later that year. Life was great, but I didn't have a shul to attend and often prayed at home, alone. We were blessed to find 48 Larchwood Avenue, which was previously being rented to college students. This site was perfect, as it is the only through lot with frontages on both Old Farm Road and Larchwood Avenue, the only lot like it along Larchwood. The 2 frontages provided a connection between 2 growing Jewish neighborhoods. As you can imagine, both the land and building were in dire need of work. We were able to make a deal with the property owner to rent his property with the option to purchase. We knew there was a need for a shul. Our initial application to the town was limited and ultimately contained some restrictions due to a nearby parcel. We agreed to these restrictions because we believe that, notwithstanding the restrictions, considering our small number and seasonal members, we'd be able to practice our faith. Within a year, we exercised our right to purchase the property. We removed its swimming pool, its tennis court, and bedrooms. We completely gutted the interior and built a prayer room and library. We thought we had everything we needed. A place to go for the Sabbath and the holidays, while we maintained prayer and study within our homes during the week. We never anticipated the growth of year-round Jewish families in our neighborhood. The neighborhood has exploded with excitement, with lots of young couples moving to it and homes being remodeled and built. Now, it's 9 years later, and we have outgrown the current facility. On Saturday mornings, the men's section is packed. The women are standing room only, and the kids are praying in the hallway. It's incredible to see 3 and sometimes even 4 generations of families gathering every week to practice their religion. However, some men and women can't even attend because they simply know they won't get a seat. We simply can't accommodate the men, women, and children who attend on each Sabbath, nor can we accommodate the congregation for the high holidays. Some have already told me that they don't come because they feel embarrassed to walk in and not have a seat. We're forced to rent a tent each year during the high holiday season and hold services outside. Finally, I will touch on the proposed mikveh or ritual bathhouse. It provides an integral and required practice of the Jewish faith by married women. It will be used by appointment only and is attended by only one woman at a time. Most importantly, it is not being used during regular synagogue hours. Having a mikveh within walking distance is crucial on Friday nights and holidays. My body trembles as I speak to you tonight. My brother and I have taken on a huge responsibility. The responsibility of making sure our grandfather's traditions and 3,300 years of Jewish faith can continue to flourish. We believe the proposed plans will provide the community with the necessary space to allow all members to attend the synagogue in order to practice their faith and continue their Jewish study. This is essential for our religious practices. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaac. Madam Chair, did any of the board members have any questions or clarifications they needed before we move on to the next witness?
Any board members with questions? No, Ms. Krimko.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce you to this handsome man sitting next to me to my right, Matthew Sharrow.
How you doing?
I am submitting him as an expert in the field of professional engineering. I would ask him to take a moment to qualify himself in that regard.
Sure, I'm Matthew Sharrow, S-H-A-R-O. I'm a principal at Dynamic Engineering in Lake Como, New Jersey. I've testified in front of this board as well as the Ocean Township Planning Board, as well as many townships throughout Monmouth, Ocean County, and the state of New Jersey as a professional engineer. And yes, my license is in good standing.
Okay, Mr. Sharrow, do you affirm to tell, raise your hand, do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth?
I do.
Okay, we will accept.
Are there any objections to his qualifications, Madam Chair? I know it's not usual to ask, but when there are attorneys here representing neighbors, oftentimes we'd like to take a moment to ask that.
Okay, are there any objections to the qualifications?
Okay, thank you. So if I can borrow this, now that you've all seen that, I'm going to ask to share my screen. Oh, give me 1 second. Let me share my screen and let me know when everybody can see that. Can you see that?
Yes, we can see it.
Great. So, and just by way of reference, this is what we moved into evidence as A7. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt. And now that you have the context of the needs of the Jewish people in this neighborhood, I'm going to have Matt walk us through what's existing and what we're proposing.
Sure, thank you, Ms. Krimko. So this is, as mentioned before, this is located at 48 Larchwood Avenue. This is the existing synagogue along Larchwood Avenue. It's block 8.02, lot 3, and lot 23. Existing on site today are 2 buildings. The first building along Larchwood Avenue is a 3,857 square foot single story building. And behind that, there's an accessory building that is 757 square feet. There's sidewalks throughout the site, plenty of landscaping along the perimeters, along the roadways. There is a through lot, which Mr. Masri noted before, that goes to Old Farm Road. There is no access point to Old Farm Road. There is just a pedestrian access. Along Larchwood Avenue, there is a one-way in, one-way out. I'll call it a horseshoe driveway. Starting from the north side of the driveway is the entrance. That's the right side of the plan for those at home. And then you loop around, go around the front of the building, and you exit out to the south side of the property. I'd like to go proposed.
Well, why don't, would you like me to go to the proposal? Or you want to talk about the community first?
We can talk about the community first.
So, well, I filed a request of the town. I reviewed the minutes of the hearings from 2013, and there was evidence moved in as A1, which was a tax map reflecting highlights of all of the homes in the immediate vicinity, which were owned by congregants or people who attended this synagogue. So what I had Matt do was overlay that onto a aerial tax map. And so what I'm going to show you now is what we marked in as A9, which is the congregation exhibit from 2013. And since it's not really readable, this point, Matt, why don't you just take a minute and explain what the different colors are and what the dotted line is around?
Sure. So as you can see, this is based on an aerial map. And I'm not sure if you can see at home, but there's the black lines that indicate all the property lines within the area. Then there's also the white dashed line that goes all the way around in a circle. That's a 3/4 mile radius around the property that's highlighted in pink in the middle of the circle. So as you can see, the yellow properties that are around the pink property are the properties that were part of the congregation in 2013. And that was a total of 75 properties within that 3/4 mile radius.
Okay. And then as A10, in consult with our clients and as a visual depiction of what Mr. Mastery said about the neighborhood exploding with excitement over the rabbi and the ability to pray at Larchwood synagogue, what is the blue represent?
So obviously same map, same circle, same aerial behind it, but this time we highlighted the congregation members or properties in a purple color. And now within that 3/4 mile radius, we are looking at 212 properties total.
Okay, and so in 13, there were how many?
75.
Okay, and now we're almost 3 times.
Almost 3 times.
Okay, so recognizing the need then for the community and the testimony from Isaac with regard to the overcrowding and people praying in hallways on holidays and even on Shabbat, what are we proposing now? And this is, I'm referring to A8 in evidence. This is the site plan rendering. And I'm going to enlarge, now that everyone has seen the context, I'm going to just enlarge it a bit so the details are more clear.
Yep, so this is actually, I think, an overlay. The renders.
Oh, this is the, yes, I'm sorry. This is the aerial map exhibit. Oh, we didn't introduce it. So let me move on to the site. Disregard that one. Actually, since I showed it, just for purposes of keeping the record, A11 is an aerial map overlay, which is the color rendering overlaid over the aerial map. And that was also dated 6/16/22.
So as Ms. Krimko noted, this is a render of the site plan over the aerial map that we previously introduced when I discussed the existing conditions. What I like to do here is I like to show just a snippet of what we're proposing over the aerial, so it gives you an idea how it relates to the property surrounding it. As you can see, and I'll get a little bit more detailed, but you can see the existing building in light orange along Larchwood Avenue at the bottom of your screen. The darker orange color behind it is what we're proposing here tonight, the addition to that existing building. And then to the rear of the site is that mikveh. And I'll get a little bit more detail. I just wanted everybody to get an idea of how it's going to look on the site, how it's going to relate to the surrounding neighborhood and surrounding properties.
Can you still hear about the site rendering?
You can go to the site rendering. Thank you. So this is, I believe, Exhibit A.
This is Exhibit A8, correct.
Exhibit A8 is a site plan rendering prepared by our office dated 6/16/2022. This is basically the same site plan sheet that is in the site plan package. We just added some color to it to kind of make it pop for everybody at home. And we also added some of the landscaping elements just to kind of add to what's going on site. First, I'm going to start with some the addition. So as I noted before, you have the existing synagogue building at the bottom of the page. That's Larchwood Avenue. For purposes of this call, north is to the right of the page. I may reference it once in a while. So along Larchwood Avenue, you have that existing building in light orange. Behind it, you have the addition, which is proposed to be an 8,723 square foot addition. That's just the footprint of the addition. That's not the other elements, which our architect will get into later. And then behind that is your proposed mikveh in the dark orange as well. And that's 2,770 square foot mikveh. And that's, again, just a footprint. So what I want to do is a little bit of the operations, then I'll get into the site layout. So operations for use such as this, they have deliveries, they have open hours, and they have trash storage. The beauty of this is it's all going to stay the same. Deliveries are standard mail deliveries, FedEx trucks, UPS trucks, postal services. They're not getting large deliveries for anything. So just like anybody else, just like the residential neighborhood around it, they're having the postman come up to the front door, drop off the mail, and leave. They enter off Larchwood Avenue and exit off Larchwood Avenue. That will happen with the proposed application as well. Hours of the synagogue will stay the same, obviously. Then the trash storage, which was brought up by your board professional. So currently along the south side or the left side of the page, there is a trash corral, I'll call it. It's a 4-foot high white vinyl fence that houses 8 trash totes and one recycling tote. And that is brought out to the street and collected by the Township collection facility. So that will remain as well. They don't plan on increasing that. We will have to move it a little bit, which I'll get to in a couple minutes. But so trash will remain the same as it does today.
Okay, and you actually don't have it shown on this plan, but you will on a resubmitted plan.
That is correct. So I'll hit it right now real quick. So when we resubmit, we will, currently it's located along the south side, southwest side, southeast side of the property, closer to Larchwood Avenue. What we're gonna do is we're gonna push it into the site 30 more feet in that green space that's just south or just left of the, yep, exactly, thank you. Just left of the addition, the building addition. So the same exact fence will be 30 feet further away from Larchwood Avenue. Okay. And their operations will remain the same.
I'm glad you brought up fencing because we originally on the plan showed a solid fence around the entirety of the property, and it would have required variance relief for a solid fence greater than 3 feet in the front yard. We actually are eliminating all of the fencing. So other than the trash enclosure fence, which would meet the ordinance requirements, we are not going to have any perimeter fencing, with the exception, as you hear later on, a 10-foot sound wall in one location, which was the request of the adjacent neighbor to the north. But other than the sound wall, there is no perimeter fencing being proposed. So I just wanted to clear that up for the record now. All of those variances go away for fencing in a front yard.
Correct. And just to clarify, per the board planner's letter, they were predominantly around lot 2 and lot 4 to the north and south side, along our Old Farm Road.
Okay.
Now I'll get into the proposed access. It's staying very similar to what was existing along Larchwood Avenue. You have on the north side of the property or the right side of the property, you have a full access movement. So that allows you to enter in there, go around to the left in front of the building, and then exit out to the south side of the property. So the driveways are essentially in the same location. The only difference is you will now be able to exit out of the north driveway as well. And that's just to have access to the rear parking lot, which I will get to in a few minutes. There are a few variances associated with the driveways. The first is the size of the driveway on the north side. No, sorry, I take that back. There are two variances with the driveway. The first one is there's 2 curb cuts. You only allowed 1 curb cut in the zone. And the second one is that it's not centrally located along the frontage. And then along Old Farm Road, there is no access. We're maintaining that existing pedestrian access off of Old Farm Road. So there's no new accesses off Old Farm Road. As far as parking, so as you enter the site, you can traverse along the north side of the existing building, past the proposed addition into a parking lot to the rear of the site that has 39 parking spaces. There is a variance, there's 272 spaces required. So we are asking for a variance there, which we'll get into more detail with the traffic engineer and the planner. The parking spaces back there are 9 by 18 in size. That is a variance for the size of the stalls. But that's a variance that this board and the planning board typically grant, and that's really a requirement more for shopping centers when you have carts. It's a very RESA standards and other regulatory standards. 9 by 18 is standard. Correct. 9 by 18 is sufficient for this type of use. Okay, and before you go on, just one quick thing. I know that in Jim's letter, he called out the aisle width at 18 feet. And our aisle width between the head-on parking is the 24 feet is required, correct? Correct. So the only portion that isn't is actually, I don't know if it would be called a parking aisle because it's not between head-on cars, but it's this access aisle or driveway. Correct. So there's a 2-way access aisle from the site at Larchwood Avenue to the parking behind the addition. As you circulate around to the rear, you go into a 1-way counterclockwise circulation around the parking. Where there's cars parked, it's 24 feet, while when there's no cars, it's 18 feet. And we will certainly have our traffic engineer testify to the safety, but the reason for shrinking the size of this driveway aisle, it's your understanding from the client that this was a concession made to the neighbor to the north who wanted the driveway further away from his property. That is correct, and I can get into it right now if you want. So there's also, we also added some additional landscaping along that property line, that drive aisle. So there's 20-foot evergreens being planted there. There is a 10-foot sound wall as well being planted. Okay, and
on the plan, it was inadvertently submitted without showing those 20-foot trees. So when you're referencing the 20-foot trees, and you can see my cursor, it's this area here. When we revise plans, we'll show these to be planted at 20 feet in height. Is that correct?
That is correct. Going up the north side and making the left at the property.
Okay, and the sound wall is here?
That's correct, in the gray hatched area.
Okay, and the sound wall is how tall?
10 foot high.
Okay, so we're proposing a sound wall that's 10 foot high. The maximum height permitted is 6 feet, as we know.
That's correct.
So we do need a variance for that, but it's at the request of the only neighbor that it will have any kind of impact on.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Very welcome. Now, if you go to the south side of the site, I want to just introduce the 8 parking stalls over on that side. So as you come into the property from the north side of Larchwood Avenue, you can go in front of the building, and then there's 8 additional parking stalls in the front, including 1 ADA stall. As far as bulk requirements go for the project, there are a few variances that we were requesting. The first one is the front yard setback, and that is to the old farm road setback. You want to scroll up?
Yep. For the mikvah.
So that's for the mikvah. The requirement is 65, and we're proposing 47.2.
Well, just what for a single family home that could be 2 stories and 35 feet, what's the setback requirement?
65.
No, not for a synagogue, not a conditional use standard. Just
65.
No, that's not. All right, we'll go back to
Yeah,
that.
I'll have to find if there's a different.
We'll go back to that.
Reanalyze it for the synagogue. So.
Okay. But this is the mikvah that needs that variance is only 1 story in height?
Yes.
Okay. And the architect will testify as to how tall that is.
Correct. So the next one is the side yard setback. Also to the mikvah, to the north side of the mikvah, requirement is 50 feet, and there's proposed 13 feet. The rear yard setback, and this is kind of a tricky, situation due to the through lot here. There is one small rear yard along the middle southern portion of the site, right there. Thank you. And that's a 75-foot requirement, and there's 15.8 feet provided there.
Okay.
Lot coverage is building coverage. We are proposing 34%, and 30% is required. So we're just above that.
Right, but before you go into that, so in Ocean, typically on a residential lot in this neighborhood, you'd be required to deduct 25%. And if there's any wetlands or environmental constraints, and that's your buildable lot area.
That's correct.
But because it is a synagogue and it has the requirement of the 25-foot buffers, all of that buffer area is actually reduced out of the buildable lot area.
Correct.
So if it was treated as a typical lot, would we meet the building requirement?
We would be just about meeting the building requirement, yes.
Okay.
And then the impervious coverage is at 98.4%, where 75% is required. Again, as Ms. Krimko explained, there's some calculations into developing and creating the buildable lot area. And if that was, if we didn't have those requirements in that calculation, 98% sounds daunting, but it's really 66% coverage of the property. And then the last bulk requirement is buffer for parking in a residential zone. We're providing 11.3 feet, and then the proposed or the requirement is 25 feet.
Can I interject something here, Jennifer?
Sure.
He's bouncing between conditional use requirements and bulk requirements, which I think is clouding the record.
Okay,
I think you need to clarify what's a conditional use requirement and then what is a C variance, not a D variance.
Okay. And I think that's fair. And I think that right now, Matt's just going through the list. Our planner is going to offer testimony for it.
Okay.
But you know, and my notice outlines it very clearly that the conditional use variances are the front yard setback, the side yard setback, and the rear yard setback, the buffer requirement, and the building coverage. So those are the conditional requirements.
You know, I know your notice does that.
No, I wanted to clarify.
I don't want the record to be clouded, that's all.
Right, and when Paul Greigel goes, he will go into great detail as to the different types of variances, what are existing, what are new, and all of that. I think that Matt's just trying to get the board familiar where we are in compliance, and then our planner will break it down as to what types. But I appreciate that clarification.
Thank you.
Anything else, Jim?
Nope.
Okay.
There was one additional variance that was noted in the board planner's letter, which was the change in grade exceeding 2 feet. That basically happens along the north property line, along the parking lot and the mikveh building. Moving on to lighting, we have a lighting design here. It was designed to meet the needs of this use. Basically, lighting up the parking areas and the sidewalk areas. The lighting will be on timers as the previous lighting is on timers. We will have 12 area lights throughout the parking area that are 12 foot high. We kept them shorter to you know, maintain that same look that's out there today. We're using efficient LED fixtures that are low profile and downlit. There are a couple variances or technical waivers associated with the lighting. The first is the light pole the property along the parking areas. The light poles are within the 25-foot requirement to a residential property. There is a minimal exceedance of the light foliage onto the residential property. The minimal horizontal illuminance, we go a little bit below that because we have areas like the green space that is at 0 because we're not lighting it. And then the two that kind of come together are the average to minimum uniformity ratio and the maximum to minimum uniformity ratio. And that's essentially due to we're trying to keep those light poles low, being the type of use in the neighborhood. And what happens is that causes some hot spots, creating that ratio to be a little off from what a typical commercial use would want. So
okay, and also this is not a commercial use. This is a conditionally permitted house of worship. Of
course.
And we are not having any negative impact on the neighbors.
Nope.
Correct. So I think most importantly, I think what you're trying to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, these are technical in nature based on how the ordinance is written, but the important part, trespass of light onto the neighbor's properties will not occur.
That's correct. That's why we positioned the lights where they are. That's why we kept the light poles low to prevent that glare and that trespass from happening. Moving on to landscaping, which, as you can see around the property, there's plenty of landscaping along the perimeter and some of the islands and along the buildings. We are proposing a total of 179 plantings. That includes 81 new evergreen trees and ornamental trees and 98 new evergreen and deciduous shrubs. As I stated, most of those shrubs are along the perimeter of the property to effectively screen to the neighbors on all sides. There are quite a few existing shrubs.
Look.
We can mute Jack,
Yeah.
please. Jack Z can mute, or if we can, thank you. I'm sorry, please continue. I was identifying the person.
No problem at all. Where was I? Oh, most of the perimeter plantings are there to screen to the neighbors. You know, we do have a couple of variances with the plantings and the landscaping. I can run through them real quick. I won't dwell too much on them because we are proposing quite a bit of landscaping here. The first one would be the landscaped islands in the parking area. they should be, they're required to be 10 feet. We're proposing 6 feet. I think that's sufficient enough for this parking lot. Then there's the requirement to have 10 feet of landscaping between the property line and the roadway, or 15, let me just make sure I got that right, because there's two different ones here. 10 feet to the right of way, or 15 feet to the curb line. So we have about 10 feet to the right of way. So we're requesting a variance for that. I believe your board planner didn't have an issue with that. That was just it's just to for snow plows and stuff like that during the winter seasons. The next one is the requirement to have 7 deciduous trees. We are proposing 7 ornamental trees. They're similar in nature. Just the deciduous trees are a little larger. So we can work with the planner to find some areas for the deciduous trees.
Right. So we're going to comply.
Comply. Yeah.
Okay. So let's do that. In those areas where we're going to comply, let's not go into it. Yeah. And that was also a comment from the Environmental Commission, and we did have an opportunity to review the Environmental Commission review, and as it relates to their concerns with the types of trees, the species of trees, we can comply with all of that. We don't have a problem working with them.
And then, yep, agreed. And then the last one was the staggered trees along the property line. We're providing we're proposing single row trees along all the property lines. The big difference is there's existing trees along those properties as well, so it effectively increases the screen for this use.
Okay. And now with regard to stormwater, and let's start with that Mr. Matlock issued a letter with some stormwater comments. Is there anything in that letter we cannot comply with?
No, we can comply with all items.
So we can stipulate, Madam Chair, that we will comply with your board engineer's review letter, but knowing that some of the neighbors may have concern with potential runoff, I would ask Matt in his layman's terms as much as possible to not go through in great detail, because that's what you pay your engineer to do, but just explain how we are handling stormwater and whether or not it's going to have an impact on anyone in the neighborhood.
Sure. So I will try to keep this brief. Us engineers, we like this kind of stuff. So basically, on site today, there is no stormwater system. So essentially, what happens is when it rains, stormwater just sheet flows off into all directions towards Old Farm Road, towards the north, and towards Larchwood Avenue. So what we're doing is we're proposing a full-on conveyance stormwater management system, and along with the curbing, actually will now collect a majority of that stormwater that was previously draining to other properties into the roadway. We'll collect it, we'll clean it, we'll detain it, we'll infiltrate it, and pretty much have some super significant improvements around the site from a stormwater perspective. So we meet all the township ordinances and DEP regulations.
So before we go there, even though we're increasing impervious coverage, at the end of the day, this site will drain more positively in layman's terms than it does today, in that we're going to collect and treat what's on site, and it won't be sheet flowing and running off either into the street or the neighbors.
Correct. Yeah, there will be no sheet. There will be limited sheet flow into the neighbors compared to what it is today. Even though there is the increase in impervious, we'll be treating it with water quality units, as well as infiltrating it into the ground to preserve groundwater.
Okay.
And that's it from a technical perspective on the.
Okay. And as far as outside agency reviews, we've already obtained Freehold Soil Conservation District approval, and we received a letter of no interest from the Monmouth County Planning Board.
That is correct, both in March.
Okay. Wrong
Mr.
one.
Sharrow, I just have a couple of questions. Actually, it pertains to the plan rendering. Ms. Krimko, you mentioned no parameter fencing. So everywhere where it's going to be a sound wall, so everywhere it says fencing on the plan rendering, there's no fencing. It's now a sound wall.
No, I'm sorry. It's the only place there'll be any type of fencing at all is where the sound wall is right here. Anywhere it says fencing on the property, there'll be nothing.
Okay. And you mentioned that was for the neighbor who requested it to the right.
This sound wall was as in response to a direct request to the neighbor to the north.
And to clarify, obviously, existing fencing will remain.
Right, but we're going to clean up the plans to show what fencing will be there. But what I wanted to indicate was we are eliminating the variance for fence height in a front yard altogether.
Okay.
And the only variance for fencing that we are seeking is with regard to this sound wall. I apologize if I wasn't clear.
And Jen, what's the setback of the first part of the sound wall? Is that a front yard, or is it's going to commence after the front yard?
It starts after the front. It starts after the front yard.
It starts after the front yard setback.
Is that the conditional use setback or the bulk one?
It starts at the 65-foot front.
The conditional use setback.
Okay. I can't read the numbers. Thank you.
Were there any other questions from any board members?
I had a question. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
I have a few questions, so if you want to go first, it's fine.
Sure. I just had one, and I'm not sure if I'm asking this.
Do you want me to leave this up or take it down?
No, actually, if you can go to the plot plan where you show the houses with the radius. I had a question on,
which year? There's two of them, 213 or 221 or 222.
Well, go to the most recent then. It's not going to
222.
Not sure it's going to matter that much for my question. But.
Right in the middle.
Right here.
Nope. Yep.
Got it.
That's it.
Where, I mean, so you're showing that the location of people that worship the synagogue and the location of the current synagogue. Where is the closest one outside of that where people could go to worship?
Well, I'm not sure because everybody we're showing you worships at this synagogue.
I get that, but if there's one on Norwood Ave, I mean, it's not necessarily a hardship for somebody to go to the Norwood Ave one. And I know there's not one there, right? I'm just using that as an example. It's not a hardship for them to have to walk to the Norwood Ave versus expanding the Larchwood Ave one.
So the good news is, Mr. DeGennaro, that religious uses like this are protected and the government really can't tell people where to pray or how to pray. And that's a federal law. So this synagogue serves the people who want to pray here.
And I don't think they have to establish a hardship. You'll get more testimony from our planner and their planner as to this expansion. It's not a hardship variance. It's a C2, which is a conditional use variance that the site can meet notwithstanding the conditions the site can accommodate. So It's a little different standard. So don't get the hardship involved at this point.
But Mr. DeGennaro, following your train of thought, the reason for this was to show the explosive growth of people who want to pray with this rabbi, with this community. And that's the sole purpose of this exhibit, to show the need for the expansion.
But understood.
Can I ask a few questions?
Sure. Would you like me to put anything up, Mrs. Tellerico?
No, it's more generic questions because I appreciate, the information that Mr. I guess his name is Misri. I'm sorry if I said Masri.
He is sometimes, but tonight.
I mean, I'm very interested in all of this, and this is, more a generic community question. So, is this house of worship open to the general public in our community, or is it by membership only, or like how would you be able to go there as a general community member just to, if you're interested in the customs, the traditions, learning more about it?
Isaac will be happy to answer that.
Sure. As I mentioned, we don't charge membership, so all are welcome. It's an Orthodox Jewish synagogue. So yes, all are welcome.
And just to go a step further, Vin Gopal, for example, has come, and he's not Orthodox Jewish as far as I know, correct?
Correct.
But he has come and prayed here or experienced the prayer here. And many township officials or other people who are not affiliated with the Jewish faith at all are welcome to come and observe, much like anything. There's no entry fee.
No.
And I'm very happy to hear that, because our community, is very close knit, and we attend a lot of events together. And I'm very happy to hear that, your synagogue is open to people of all faiths. I do have other questions. Are there any events that include the full community? And when I say full community, I'm saying Ocean Township, anyone that lives in the town.
Do you mean events at the synagogue, Mrs. Tellerico?
Yes.
No. The biggest reason, of course, is we can't accommodate the parking during the week if we had a full event. So no, we've been avoiding anything to do with full events.
Mrs. Tellerico, would you mind if I asked a follow-up question for that? Because I think I know where you're going with it, and I would just like to elicit a little bit more from Isaac, if that's okay with you.
Oh, absolutely, sure.
Okay. Isaac, when you talk about that there's no parking, you're sensitive in that you live footsteps away from the synagogue. So you're sensitive to the community and the neighborhood in which you live.
Absolutely, very sensitive.
And the 200 plus families who all attend this synagogue obviously want to maintain the character of their neighborhood and don't want to see a catering hall, for example.
That's correct.
So Mag and David, which is what I think most of us call it, and those in the community call it Westfield Shul. And that's the one, Mrs. Tellerico, that's on Deal Road.
Mm-hmm.
Is that similar to what we're proposing here?
No, not at all. It's very, very different. Again, I mentioned that we don't have a social hall, and we're not proposing a social hall. We're simply looking to have I also mentioned that we have breakfast, and that's when the rabbi gives his sermon on Saturday mornings. And that breakfast room that we have today, simply, it's not even a breakfast room, it's basically in the hallways. We can't accommodate it. And so we're just building a larger breakfast room so we can accommodate that cold breakfast we have on Saturday mornings to listen to the rabbi's sermon.
And I think most importantly, and I think that this might answer your question, Mr. Tellerico, there are no events that occur at this synagogue that are not directly related to a religious ceremony that also occurs at the synagogue.
That's 100% correct.
So the reason why that there are no community events here, first, is obviously the parking is an issue. And secondly, every event that occurs here is always either before or after a religious ceremony. So when you heard words like bris or bar mitzvah, those are all deeply religious ceremonies performed by a rabbi or a moyel in a circumcision, right? But these are religious ceremonies, correct?
Correct.
So you would never host a garden party here.
No.
And you wouldn't host a bingo event here.
We would not.
And you will not be renting this out. Nobody can rent this or use it. Is there a commercial kitchen?
Nope. There's no commercial kitchen. We don't even charge if somebody in special occasion you do a bris or a bar mitzvah. We don't even charge them for that.
And when you say a bar mitzvah, and forgive me, there's for those people who are Jewish and some are not Jewish, and there's different types of Judaism. Growing up in Ocean Township, you may have been to quite a few bar and bar mitzvahs where you go to the synagogue and you have a service, and then you go off site to a big party somewhere where there could be 100 or 200 people, like a wedding. Is that what you mean by having a bar mitzvah here?
No.
Why don't you explain to them what you mean by a bar mitzvah?
If somebody has a bar mitzvah, and we've never had one in the last 9 years, just so you know. But if someone has a bar mitzvah, that means they come into the synagogue with their family. The rabbi and the family helps them put on a special wrap, which is called tefillin. They put that on. The boy would practice a couple of the readings for that day and go up to the Torah and read a special part. That's basically the bar mitzvah. And then they would go somewhere else to have the breakfast because we can't accommodate it. Again, we don't have a commercial.
So you're not proposing any kind of parties or celebrations here?
No, again, only the one that is connected directly on a special circumstance to a religious occasion.
Okay. Did that answer the question better, Mrs. Tellerico?
Yes, but I do have a couple more. I'm sorry. How many parking spaces do you have there now?
Can I defer to the traffic engineer for that? He's going to go into.
I was just wondering because, yeah, I mean, it's Sure. I could ask Matt a question.
I don't know that there's a difference between defined parking spaces and how people park. So, I mean, I think how many people can you fit on the lot now, I guess is the question.
On the driveway that we have right now, we could fit about 20 cars, I would say.
But are they designated parking spaces?
They're not.
I'm sorry, you're cutting out. Did you say 120 cars?
No, 20, he said.
I can't.
20.
Can you hear us?
Think
everybody
she
else hear us?
I think she froze.
We can hear you. I think.
Yeah, we can hear.
Okay.
He said 20. It was 20 cars.
Correct. And again, it's not in designated spots. What's been happening is that, Isaac, why don't you tell them how it works?
Again, on Saturday morning, which is when we have the large crowds, everybody walks. There are no cars that drive from Friday night until Saturday night. We don't have anybody driving during Sabbath.
Unless you have a community member who's not Jewish, like Vin Gopal.
If somebody comes to visit, somebody who's outside of the norm, but 99% of the time, it's an Orthodox Jewish community members that arrive, and they arrive by foot or by bicycle. During the week, as we mentioned, we're open during the week. And I also mentioned that we only have about 25 congregants come during the week. Some of them walk, like I do, because I live diagonally across the street from the synagogue. And others park in the driveway that we currently have. We have a large circular driveway, and we have a system that everybody's accustomed to, where people that leave early park at one side, and the balance who stay a little bit longer will park on the other side.
And we talked about, there was some conversation, there are some people who would drive their car on Friday night before sundown and park on the property and then leave their car there until Saturday night at sundown. And approximately how many is that?
It's probably anywhere from 6 to 14 or 15, depending on the weather. If it's a rainy Friday afternoon, then more people will drive. If it's a nicer day, then obviously less people drive. But most people will either get dropped off or walk on Friday before the Sabbath begins.
Are you back with us, Mrs. Tellerico? I see you moving again.
I am. I don't know what happened. I'm very sorry. My internet just collapsed. It went down. I had to log back in. I'm sorry. I appreciate all the time you're spending, answering my questions. I do have just 2 more questions. So are there any charities that are contributed in Ocean by the synagogue, like any local charities that there's donations given?
Local donations from the synagogue direct? Well, the synagogue runs, as I mentioned again, we don't charge a membership fee. So the synagogue is its own charity. It's its own.
It's a not-for-profit.
It's a non-for-profit, and so it runs at a deficit that my family tries to cover when there's a shortfall. So the synagogue does not give out direct donations. They do raise money and do events for other for people who are in need of food or money, but that's through the rabbi. He has a fund that is there to help those in need. Okay, and can anyone access that fund, or is it just people from your community? I'm not sure the rabbi's guidelines on who he even gives it out to. I've never
okay. And then my last question, and this probably may have been answered, but are there any daycare or school? Is there a daycare or school component at the synagogue?
Absolutely not.
Okay. And just to clarify, there is no school component, but there are what you said, religious studies with the rabbi. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But that's for the adults or the bar mitzvah boys. There are no classes for children.
No, there's a religious study or a review, but there's no school-like classes for the children, for any children. Again, I'll relate to what you learn about, in a synagogue. As I mentioned again in my opening remarks, you pray there, and you also learn about the Jewish religion. So whether that's a child or an adult, the rabbi's giving you a sermon. We have a rabbi for the younger children who prays with them, and we'll also give them a weekly class during breakfast.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Any
Madam
other
Chair, I had a quick
questions
question, if I could. Mr. Massey, did at any point have you considered approaching a neighbor to purchase some property there to give you more space to expand, or just moving somewhere else in that immediate area to be able to have a better setup for yourself?
So there actually, it's a good question, but there actually is no better setup than the setup we currently have. And we say it often that this was almost a godsend property, because it is, and again, I mentioned this in my opening remarks. If you look at an aerial on Larchwood and Old Farm Road, this is the only property that connects Old Farm Road to Larchwood. So all of the Old Farm Road residents, or most of them, all of them who come, but most of them do come, all walk and cut through the additional lot that our property has. Again, our property cuts from Larchwood, has the walkway all the way through Old Farm Road. Old Farm Road residents simply walk up the pedestrian walkway, and they're in the synagogue. Otherwise, they would have had to walk all the way around if this was any other lot along Larchwood.
And also, Isaac, if you were to purchase other lots or try and expand onto other lots, it would only be to create more parking, which you really don't need based on the numbers that you have.
Correct.
So
Correct.
I think
the building size that we are proposing, we believe accommodates us for now and well into the future. And we'll go through that.
And as someone who lives in the neighborhood, you certainly don't want a parking lot of 300 spaces that will never be used.
I wouldn't want it myself. I live, I told you, I live diagonally across the street. I wouldn't want a parking lot with 300 cars. And there's absolutely no need for it, because
what's the max number of cars that you would expect to have there for a daily prayer?
I mentioned that we have 25 people attend. Some walk. So I think probably between 18 and 20 would suffice.
And
but I think we're proposing almost double that.
We talked about explosive growth in the neighborhood and the need. Has that number of people really changed for the, I'm going to call them diehards who come every day, as opposed to the 300 who just come on Shabbat?
No, we could accommodate the same 300 that come on Saturday during the week. Right, the children wouldn't come, so that number would be reduced. But we could accommodate up to 180 men during the week. But the men are rushing off to work. A lot of them work in New York City or outside of the local area and have to commute somewhere. And so the level of the number of people over the last number of years that we started to open during the week has not increased much at all. You gain a few people if somebody's dad or mom or close relative passes away that year. We have a custom to attend synagogue every day for the entire year from when that person passes away. And so you'll get a new congregant to come if, let's say, their dad passes away and they have to now attend a daily service to say a special prayer, which they're required to say 3 times a day when you lose someone within your 7 immediate family: mother, father, brother, sister, your son, daughter.
So you're comfortable that the 39 spaces we're proposing is more than adequate to address the needs for those days when they'll be people driving there?
Yes.
Can I ask one more question? Sorry. I find all this fascinating. That's why I'm asking a lot of questions. But I'm just wondering, what schools are utilized by the children that attend the synagogue?
95% of our the children within the synagogue attend Hillel on Beale Road.
And I just want to clarify one thing with you, Isaac. When you'd indicated that you could accommodate 180 men, what you're saying is that for all these past 9 years, any of the men in the neighborhood could come, and they've never come.
During the week.
Right, yes. You couldn't accommodate the 180 men because you'd have nowhere for them to park. But I think what you were trying to say is they could have come all this time and they never have.
That's correct. And we've never had anyone, every email that has ever gone out from us has always said, because one of the stipulations we made in 2013-14 was we wouldn't have anyone park along Larchwood Avenue because Larchwood already is somewhat of a tight street. So any parking on there, I think now the township actually even put up no parking signs on one side of Larchwood Street. But we never got a violation or even a phone call to say there are too many cars on the street during the week because of your prayers. We've never had one complaint.
One last question from me, Ms. Krimko, at least for tonight. You mentioned the neighbor to the north. Were there any requests or accommodations the neighbor, I'm trying to go from memory from the rendering, I guess the south?
No,
because the other.
No,
okay.
There were no other requests from any neighbor as to modifications to the plan, with the exception of Mr. Gazarovski's client.
Correct. The neighbor south.
I'm sorry, if the Galaxy can mute, thank you.
The neighbor to the south is a congregant who does come every day. He walks right from next door. And he's a lovely man. And if he told you, a few years ago, he said, do you mind putting up some trees? I would like to have some trees and actually with a pathway so I can connect from my property to yours. And from his backyard, I said, my pleasure. I said, if you want me to put something on your backyard, you'd have to walk in water and grass to come through. And we made that accommodation for him. So we're looking, even though it wasn't an obligation of the application or an obligation of the board, it was a simple, friendly request. And we are a friendly neighbor to everyone. And so we did that.
And I think it's important just to put on the record, well, I'm going to skip it because I don't feel like hearing objections. So we'll just skip it for now.
Okay. Any other questions from board members? Okay, and Ms. Krimko, we're at 10:27. 10:27. Is Mr. Sharrow completed? I just trying to get a gauge.
Would you like me to jump into architecturals?
Ooh, I'm sorry. Was that my out loud? Was that my out loud?
It is.
Is that your outside voice?
It's a little late, and I don't want to rush the next expert, but I also want to be respectful of the board, who's even with a 5-minute break has been here for 3.5 hours, and we do have the special meeting next week. So, Mr. Steinberg, unless you have any objections or anything that should be considered?
No, Mr. Sharrow will be back and remain available throughout the proceedings for cross-examination by attorneys and other objectors, correct, Ms. Krimko?
Yes, as will Mr. Mastry.
All right, so if before we adjourn, I guess we're going to carry this matter to a special meeting next Thursday, which is June 23rd. Is that the right date? June 23rd at 6 p.m. 6 p.m., not 9 p.m. Same Zoom address?
Yes.
The same Zoom address that you came tonight to the meeting. And it's also available on the township website if necessary. But that meeting starts at 6 p.m. and there will be no further public notice by way of either letters to the surrounding property owners or publications in the paper. Correct, Ms. Krimko? We're done?
Yes. If Madam Chair says we're done, we're done.
As she did. So I guess you can entertain a motion to adjourn.
Yes. I will make that motion. Is there a second?
I will second.
Okay.
To all the
Thank
board
you,
members,
everyone.
Board members, thank you so much for your time. It's very much
Yes,
appreciated.
thank you very much.
Next week.
Have a wonderful weekend.
Good night, everybody.
Nice.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.